Our first presenter is my wonderful boss, Dr. Jennifer Cotillon. She's the director at the CJ project at Texas Appleseed. And Jennifer has worked in the Texas Ledge since 2011 and was formerly a policy researcher with TCJC before finishing her PhD and joining Texas Appleseed. And they enjoy hiking, horror movies, and hanging with their pet. So, take it,
Thanks, Kate. Thank
Jen.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here. And thank you so much to everyone who helped put this on. I know it was not an easy feat and a lot of work. And I'm so excited that Texas Appleseed gets to be a part of this. And I hope that we can continue to do this for many more legislative sessions to come. Um, as Kayla said, I am Dr. Jennifer Carrion, Dr. J, Dr. Jen, or just Jen, straight up Jen, not too snooty to just be called Jen. Um, but you know me, woman of color, so I definitely got to throw that doctor on there. So in that spirit, we're going to be jumping in. We're going to be going over the legislative process. Definitely something I feel like I was looking at the agenda, and I think your host did a really great job of the format of which they laid these presentations out because it just gives you all kind of like a this is what it is. This is what we're going to be doing. This is how to be taking care of yourself. This is how we move forward. And I'm really excited for you all to get the benefit of the full presentation. All right. So if you all have any questions, Farah, I'm not monitoring the chat, so definitely feel free to like stop me if there's a question that pops up or anybody else if y'all can see it. Just let me know. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
All right. So before we jump into the legislature itself, I think it's really important that we all understand the state's division of power. We have three branches, and this is kind of going to be a little review of government class, so I apologize. Executive, judicial, and the legislative branch. Obviously, with legislative session in play, the third one is what we care about the most. However, it's important that we understand that the roles that each of these play in being able to impact policy, impact the laws and the bills that you all are going to be advocating for over the course of session. So here we can see very clearly that the legislative branch is the ones that are responsible for making the laws. They are a Congress. They're bicameral, which means that they have two houses, meaning that there is a House and a Senate. House of Representatives has 150 members. Senate has 31 members. Reps serve 2-year terms, while Senate serves 4-year terms. These little boxes at the bottom are kind of important to how a bill moves through the process and who gets to say what on a bill. Um, Checks and balances for the legislative branch, with the exception of the fact that they are the ones that put bills forward. I'm going to kind of give you an example of the checks and balances that the legislature did most recently. The legislature moved to impeach Ken Paxton, the attorney general, and so the legislature then in turn had to vote on it in both chambers. And in addition to that, when a governor gets a bill, they have the ultimate power. You can see there at the bottom that the governor can veto a bill from the legislature. If a governor vetoes a bill, the legislature can go back and have a two-third majority vote in both houses that overrides his veto on that bill. Given that we are in a state in which the legislature is very much in favor of the political ideology of the governor, I don't see that happening anytime soon. Um, Here you can see the next branch, the executive branch, which is the governor, Governor Abbott, Greg Abbott, who enforces the law. He is the chief executive of the state, of the commander of the Texas National Guard, so he can order the Texas National Guard. They are under, just very much like the president is the commander in chief of the military. Uh, Greg Abbott is a commander in chief of the Texas National Guard. Under him is a lieutenant governor, which is Dan Patrick. They both serve 4-year terms, and they assign boards and commissions or reign over boards and commissions. So, like the Texas, the any like TDCJ board or commission that they put together, appointees come from Governor Abbott, or Lieutenant Governor, depending on who they want on their boards. They also have they're also in charge of the state police, so DPS, state DPS. Again, I mentioned that the governor can veto a bill from the legislature. They can also call special sessions, which is what our governor loves to do. I'm sure that you have, if you've been following along in the past legislatures, you'll see that past legislative session had like maybe 2 or 3 special sessions, the same as before. This typically happens when the governor doesn't get what they want. What he wants in terms of bills passage. Last year, it was school vouchers, and bail was on there, except it only made the first round, and then it didn't see the light of day after that. And so it just continues on until they get what they want. You may have noticed, or if you've had your ear to the ground with news recently, you may have heard that the Senate fast-tracked a bill on school vouchers. That means that they already have voted a school voucher bill outside of their house, essentially. And it is going over to the House. The House, as of yesterday, has not set committees, and so they are not moving as quickly as the Senate. But if you'll recall, oh, well, I haven't gotten there yet. Oh, yes, here it is, 150 members. If you'll recall, 150 members to 31 members, it's a lot easier to get a vote through or to get a bill through when there's only 31 members versus 150 members. Okay. Last but not least is a judicial branch. So this is our Texas, like our Supreme Court, our court systems, our appeals courts, things of that nature. They, of course, interpret the law. So here it's important that we see, I'm not just giving you a government lesson, I'm showing you all how the law is essentially established and then enforced and then interpreted. The funny thing about this is that anytime that we work on a bill, what you're going to have to account for is all of this, right? How are people going to be interpreting this bill? And that includes the judicial branch of Texas. So it's something to consider. We have Supreme Court cases. We have the Supreme Court who handles civil cases. We have the Court of Criminal Appeals that handles criminal cases. Those appointments are 6 years terms. We just got new appointments to the Texas State Supreme Court. Though the majority of them have retained their appointments. Court of Appeals and the district courts, all of which fall under there. And so when a law is passed, if it is unconstitutional, was that me? Someone else signed up. When the law is passed, whenever constitutionality comes into play, that's whether or not it's violating our established rights given to us by the Constitution. The judicial branch will review those laws and they will go forward with that. Questions on any of this? No. Okay. I apologize for the blurriness of this image. I did not create this image. I just want to say that right now before my digital media manager over there gives me a side eye. This is an image that came straight from, I have a list of, and I will hand over this presentation to the host so that they can share it out if that's what y'all are planning to do so that y'all can get all of these resources. But I have a list of resources at the end of this presentation that are essentially, I pulled all this information from, and so you can definitely go through it on your own time if you'd like. So here again, you see the 3 branches and who exactly they preside over, if you will. You can definitely look at the executive branch and the judicial branch, if you will. You'll see there that there are a bunch of, again, governing boards and commissions. What exactly governing boards and commissions they go over? Public safety and corrections is definitely of most important to us here. But if you look at the legislative side, you look at the legislature. The legislative committees are essentially what run the legislature during the legislative session. And then to the right is everybody else who contributes to that, right? The Office of the State Auditor, the Legislative Budget Board, who's both talking about money and whether or not we spent our money appropriately, whether or not we're in the red, which we never are. Texas has one of the most massive rainy day funds in the nation. Third is Texas Legislative Council. The Legislative Budget Board is the one that the legislature works with on the state budget. Here you'll see a little bit more. We'll go into a little bit more about the budget and what to look for in terms of committees. But they are the ones who set the budget. The budget is almost always one of the first things that the legislature works on and the last thing that they sign off on, because it is, if a budget is not finalized by the end of session, then we will almost we will indefinitely go into a special session because the budget needs to be finalized. Otherwise, we go into a freeze, a government shutdown. And this has happened before where we have had people up at the Capitol who are essentially working for free the month of August and September while they're trying to figure out the budget. Below that is the Texas Legislative Council. These are the people who are responsible for writing laws. So if you've worked with anybody in these rooms before, if you've touched a bill, if you've touched language to a bill, it's not uncommon for us to what we call shop bills around. And what we do is we go to legislators' offices and we give them suggested language for policy. They then take that suggested language and they turn around and they give it to legislative council, and legislative council writes it up to determine to make sure that it's all good, it's all gravy, and that it's matching the way that the state writes law in Texas, and that it's doing what its intended purpose is supposed to do. The Legislative Reference Library is a library that is in the state capitol. If you all are going to be touring tomorrow, I definitely recommend that you all go there. Just to give it a gander, it is definitely essentially a precedence of all the laws that have been passed in the state of Texas in order for one to reference. And then last but certainly not least is the Sunset Advisory Commission. This one is going to be a big one for us this year because the Texas Department of Criminal Justice is under sunset, which means that they have come under review. Just let's do some interactive fun. Someone at the table or someone on the line, tell me what sunset is. Justin, I'm looking at you.
Sure, I can.
You can text me about how much you hate me for doing that later.
Yeah, well, I mean, so Sunset was essentially started because pretty much every agency within the state goes under this review, and essentially Sunset is asking basically two questions when they're reviewing these agencies, which Jen mentioned that TDCJ and all of the correctional state agencies are under that review. And so Sunset looks at them and asks, one, do we still need this agency? And if not, then they recommend to abolish. And if they do recommend that they keep it, then they go into a review process where they figure out like what are the inefficiencies, what are ways in which the agency can improve its functions and particularly to its goals. And then that has a legislative component that has a bill that has to be passed. There has to be a sunset bill, but that bill eventually it will take all of whatever recommendations came out of sunset, what all of the other things that the lawmakers are looking in that commission, they put it in a bill and it goes through the legislative process and then gets voted on.
Oh.
Yeah, okay.
No, that was great. Thank you, Justin. I also teach, I didn't say that, but I teach undergraduates. I've been teaching undergraduates for 17, 18 years now. And so I'm very much an interactive presenter. And so sorry, not sorry, but I knew my man Justin would be able to bring it home. So thank you, Justin. Yeah, most definitely. Sunset is definitely on the minds of everybody this session. And for those of you who are interested in the Sunset Report but have not yet had a chance to look at it, we can definitely get that to you in this list of resources that we're going to be passing out just so that you can take a gander. It is long, and I guarantee you that for those of you who have been working in this space or have been impacted by this space for, over a decade, you're going to be saying, well, this shit isn't you. We've been doing this for quite some time. We've been saying or asking for this stuff for quite some time. You would be correct. And it's unfortunate, but this is the process. Unfortunately, I don't ever see anyone ever saying that the TDCJ and the correctional system in the state of Texas should be abolished. So we will almost always have recommendations to fix TDCJ, not to abolish the agency. All right. So executive branch key players. These are just, and this is just more of like a breakdown of each of those branches. I essentially pulled those graphics out and just to show you a little bit more of what they preside over. So Greg Abbott, it's one of those things where I revisited this presentation and I was like, damn, I don't got to change any of these guys out. That made me sad. but it is still Greg Abbott is our governor, Dan Patrick's lieutenant governor, and Kim Paxton, the attorney general, still in power. And so, as I said, remember, lieutenant governor presides over the Senate. They are essentially the president of the Senate. And Greg Abbott has veto power. Ken Paxton essentially acts as Greg Abbott's legal counsel. And so any bill or any piece of legislation that has legal ramifications for the state, you can ensure that Ken Paxton is going to see it before Abbott does. Here is our Texas Supreme Court. Look at all their cheesy little smiles. Municipal court, justice courts. We have so many courts, guys, in the state. That doesn't even count civil courts. Municipal courts and justice courts both hear civil law, but they also hear criminal cases, specifically Class Cs or finally misdemeanors. Justice courts, otherwise known as JP courts, hear Class A and Class B misdemeanors. And then, of course, upward county level courts, district courts hear more higher level misdemeanors, and then felonies, state jail felonies, things of that nature. Again, remember, they just act as essentially the legislative review of the law. If a law is being proposed as unconstitutional, the judicial system will let us know. All right. So government class out of the way a little bit. So the Texas state legislature, two quote unquote houses, as I said, the House of Representatives and state senators. We have 150 members in the House, 31 senators in the Senate. One member is a Speaker of the House. So one representative ends up becoming voted the Speaker of the House by his peers, by their peers. Can anybody tell me who the current House Speaker is? Come on, y'all. Y'all know this. Justin, you can't answer. Nobody in the chat? Did anybody put in the chat, Farrah?
Isn't it Dustin Burrows?
Dustin, there you go, Lola. Yeah, Dustin Burrows. Lola for the win. You get a candy. I don't know where you at, Lola, but you get candy.
It's Megan.
Oh, Megan, sorry. I see it in the chat. So Lola and Megan. So y'all both get a candy. Yes, Dustin Burrows is our new Speaker of the House. Does anybody know why it's a thing to have a new speaker? Last session we had Dade Phelan as our speaker. In this session it's Dustin Burrows. This is kind of a big thing this legislative session for us to have a new speaker. Politically speaking, we have shifted slightly more to the right for our political ideologies as far as the state of Texas is concerned and the makeup of the legislature is concerned, especially in the House. As I said, the lieutenant governor presides over the Senate. They are the presiding officer over the Senate, and that means that anything that comes out of the Senate has to be okay with the lieutenant governor, right? The speaker kind of plays as a referee to the House. So again, 150 representatives, that's a lot of people to manage. And so the speaker kind of presides over the House. They keep order, they recognize members to speak, they rule over procedural matters. Unlike the lieutenant governor, who cannot vote with his peers unless it is to break a tie, the speaker can vote with their peers unless they abstain their vote to cast the deciding vote or to break a tie in the House. The fact that we have a new speaker is important because of the fact that new speaker has also taken on the political ideology of Abbott and the lieutenant governor. I say that because, yes, Texas once was red. Now we are becoming redder in certain instances. You have kind of our moderate R's, and then you have our harder R's. Dustin Burrows is kind of like a moderate hard R, if you will. And so Dustin Burrows has promised his peers that he is going to remove Democrats from the chairs of committee. Why is this an issue? Why does this matter? Should this matter? Do we care? Megan, where are you at?
I was gonna say it matters because it becomes anti-democratic if only one viewpoint is speaking, especially on committees where things are born and created.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. You're absolutely right. One of the things that Dade Phelan had in place whenever he was speaker was that he appointed Democratic chairs to the committees in order to essentially provide checks and balances, right, to the political standpoints that exist in the state of Texas. And with our swinging pendulum further to the right, we have a hired interest in not doing that, in making sure that, okay, making sure that we only are putting things through committees that are of the same ideology as the governor, right? In the House. That is essentially the role that Speaker Burrows is currently playing. What he has promised to is that on not committee chairs, but vice chairs will be Democrats appointed to committees in an attempt to facilitate something similar to what Phelan did, which was putting checks and balances within the committees themselves, rather than establishing them through the House in general. Obviously, we all know that once a bill comes out of committee, we may or may not know, but we're going to get more into it here in a second. Sorry, guys. Once a bill comes in and out of committee, the vote on the House floor matters more. And I know that Maggie Luna from Texas Harm Reduction is going to talk to y'all later today about how to advocate both in committee and on the floor. And I think it's really important that we realize that despite a bill coming out of committee, regardless of the political ideology of the chair or the vice chair, you still have to contend with the majority of the legislature that is going to be pulling for bills that fit the governor's agenda. I'm not trying to be skeptical. I'm just trying to warn, is all. And I think it's really important that we understand the expectations of what's going to be coming out this session or what's going to be attempt to be passed this session, primarily for our own mental health, right? Because it's really easily that we can get caught up in this. And I know that you'll have a mental health session later, and so I'll reserve that for that. But I will say that it's very easy, and I have team members that have not been directly impacted by the system that get burnt out from working, or deal with compassion fatigue from working this session because it is so brutal, right? You can only take so much crap being thrown at you, especially when the bills that are being proposed are bills that impact people like you or your family. It's really, really difficult. So just keep that in mind. Both the speaker and the lieutenant governor appoint committees, chairs, vice chairs. They refer bills to committees. The order of bills is established by the lieutenant governor in the Senate whenever they're heard on the Senate floor, whereas in the House, they're determined by the calendars committee, which luckily did not get nixed. That is another thing. This legislative session, there was a rearranging of House committees. Instead of the common 20 that we have, they nixed probably I don't know if we know, do you know an exact number, Justin, of how many they nixed?
Okay, were you talking about House committees?
Yeah, do you know how many they nixed? Do you remember the count?
I think it was 3 or 4.
I feel like it was when they combined a bunch of them, because now JJ is under criminal jurisprudence. And then they have 3 subcommittees, and they combined public safety, homeland security, and veterans affairs. Yeah. So they rearranged a bunch of one, and then they made a government efficiency committee with 15 people on it that my team astutely pointed out was not very efficient.
Yes.
Okay. Just some stuff to keep in mind. And so, okay, whenever I pass this, whenever I dole this out to your host, you will definitely have these links, and I encourage you all to take a look at them. Okay, let's see here. The fun part. How go for Kay.
Hey, Jen, there's a question in the chat.
Oh,
and
let's
it's,
see here.
From Nikki. Why did they do that to limit their power? Question mark.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like I said, I think it's because Dade Phelan was so adamant about keeping those checks and balances to whatever degree, right? Because like I said, even whenever you voted out of committee, you're still having to vote in the House, and so, or vote on the floor, and so it's still subject to no votes from other peers, colleagues, etc. But in this instance, at least, at the very least, because the speaker gets to refer bills to committees, that I don't know what else to call them. The MAGA, the MAGA Republicans get to ensure that essentially what's being heard is preferably their bills. I don't know if that answered your question, Nikki. So this is the fun part. So a lot of you on this call, I'm assuming, are saying, okay, this is great. Thanks for a little mini government lesson. Where do I come in? Right? You come in all throughout this process. Woohoo, fun times. I didn't make anything easy for you all. We talked about bills getting referred. Whenever bills get referred, so we have a legislative start date, right? When bills start to get filed. That happens prior to the session even starting. It happens in November. We introduce legislative session. That's 60 days prior to. Gets referred to the committee. We have a lot of pomp and circumstance. You heard me earlier whenever I said that the Senate has already assigned committee members. They're already voting out bills of their chamber. The House has not yet done that. While committees have been established, the committee members themselves have not been assigned. So we do not know who is sitting on what committee in the House. They have to do that before bills can start getting referred or heard. Okay, so when that starts to happen, and that's going to happen here soon, it typically happens around the end of February, end of February, and then bills start really getting ramped up, getting heard in March, is whenever you all essentially are triggered to start advocating, right? So a bill gets introduced, it gets referred to the committee reviews the bill, they do a bill analysis, the clerk, they do a bill analysis. Here you'll see after the committee work of the first on top, this blue line right here where it says bill analysis, public hearings, that's where we come in, okay? That's where we come in to provide testimony, and I know that you all are going to get a presentation or information on how to provide testimony in committee. Here is where we get an opportunity as members of the public to weigh in on proposed legislation. Depending on the chamber, we get 2 to 3 minutes to testify. I know that's not a lot of time, and you'd be surprised how much you can say in 2 to 3 minutes, right? So here is where you want to be paying attention the most. Whenever Nikki runs you through TLO, and they provide you with information on how to track a bill, you want to be tracking a bill when it's referred to a committee and when it's scheduled for public hearing. Because when it's scheduled for public hearing, that's going to trigger you to come and testify on this bill. Now, you may be saying, well, I don't want to testify. That seems scary. Do I have to do that? The fun thing is the answer is no, because guess what? There's a lot of stuff to do on legislation other than just testify. Testifying is potentially the best opportunity that you have to have the entire committee and the public, because sometimes all of the committee hearings are recorded. They have to be by law. So anybody can access your story or your testimony once you've given it. And it's great for people like organizations like ours that can point back to and say, look, we have the data. This is a good anecdotal story that is saying exactly what the data is saying. Us at Texas Appleseed, that's kind of how we like to lead policy, is we are very data driven, but we'll stand behind the people who are impacted to show how their stories match up with the data. So for us, while you may see us testifying in some spots, we definitely testify less than other organizations because for us, the priority people who should be testifying are those who have been directly impacted. And so we do a lot of our work in the background. What does that mean? In the background means that you can go to office visits. So if you've been impacted, or if you want to share your story, or if you have a family member that's been impacted, or if you just want to get involved, but you don't want to do testimony and you have education or experience on these issues, then you can do background work where, and again, I know that Maggie's going to go through this with you in greater detail, but where you are visiting members of the committee to share your experience with them, to let them know why the bill should or should not pass. Okay. So that is done when the bill gets referred to committee and set for a hearing as well, because what comes shortly after that, a debate and potentially changing the bill if they don't like the way that it is, that's done through committee substitutes. And it can happen before the bill is introduced or after the bill is introduced. If you're able to make it up to the Capitol tomorrow, you'll go into a committee room and you'll see kind of like what the layout is. When you testify, it is very podium-y like. But when you go to offices, it's going to be walking around like a maze because the Texas Capitol all looks the same in terms of hallways and whatnot. So just make sure that you are going with someone who knows where you're going. Okay, let's see, chat. Okay. After that debate, it goes for a committee vote. So the majority of the vote has to have a majority of the vote of the committee. And again, the committee can vary from 12 to 15 members to, I think one committee even has 8 members on it. Has to have a majority of the vote. And then it gets sent to the House Calendars Committee. Remember, I said the Calendars Committee is the committee that determines the order that bills are heard on the House floor. So this blue iteration right here, this blue pathway is the House pathway. This yellow one is the Senate. If you look at it and you're like, well, it just says the same thing backwards. Yeah, because it's the same thing. You got to go through the exact same thing on the other side that you did on the House side. So once it's set to Calendars Committee, it's set on the House floor. A bill has to be read 3 times in order for it to, it's what we call Robert's Rules of Order. It's what we follow as a state legislature in order to have government flow efficiently. And if it's not read 3 times, it can raise a point of order, or what's called a POO. Yes, that's what they call it. And the first reading literally is the bill comes up, a clerk goes into the House, reads the bill, drops it, and then it goes off for referral. That's the first reading. The second reading is when it's read in the committee. The second reading is the second time on the House floor. And then the third reading is when they do the final vote. So here you'll see second reading, debate, and potentially amend. Again, this is when I said, keep in mind that even if a bill gets voted out of committee, yes, that's a good thing, but now you have to go to the floor. Once you get it out of the House floor, once you get it, the debate, second vote, great. If it passes the second vote, then it goes on to a third reading. If it does not pass the second vote, it dies. So a lot of places for stuff to die. A bill can be referred to a committee and never set for a hearing. It's dead. A bill can be referred to a committee, can be set for a hearing and never voted on in committee. It's dead. Okay. So voted on second time, not in favor, dies on the House floor. Read third time, voted to pass, then it goes to the Senate. And then you start all over again. You get to referral to a committee, it gets set in a committee hearing, it gets heard in a committee, it gets voted in the committee, it gets sent to the Senate floor, it gets voted on by the Senate floor, and then it gets sent to the governor. It gets enrolled and then it gets sent to the governor. If a bill comes from the House that gets sent to the Senate, and the Senate doesn't like 2 or 3 lines in that bill, they will send it back to the House. They will vote on it, send it back to the House and say, we like it, if not for these 2 to 3 lines. In that instance, a conference committee is appointed. That usually consists of members from each of the committees that heard it. So if there was a corrections committee in the House and the criminal justice committee in the Senate, then 3 members will come off of each of those committees to conference over that bill. Okay. Once it's conferenced over, they'll vote on it again. That'll be the 3rd vote. They'll say yay, and then they'll pass it. Now, remember, governor, when it gets to the governor, this means that both chambers have voted yes. They've amended it. They've said, okay, we come to an agreement on these bills. Then it gets to the governor. Now, the governor can do 3 things. He can veto the bill, which means he does not like it. And it's happened before. We've made some progress in the criminal justice space that he just doesn't like or agree with, and he vetoes it. Susan. So Susan asked a question. Will you please tell us the timelines for each of these steps? And you see, I'm laughing, and you see some of my colleagues are laughing over there at the table. There is no timeline, Susan. As long as it's done, so they have to hear certain bills. Justin, can you find the deadline for the last bill hearing? I don't know. It may not even be up yet, to be honest with you. It may not be up yet. But so here's what happens. You can't hear a bill until like the end of February, 1st of March. And then it's just, again, all up to the lieutenant governor and the House speaker, which bills go where. And then it's up to the committee chair to determine whether or not they want to hear those bills. And then up to the calendars committee on whether or not they want to hear it onto the House floor. Have we had bills die because of time? Absolutely. Absolutely. And you are constantly running against the clock. Our legislative session is so short. It's from January through the beginning of June. And even then, you really only have 2 months to get anything done in those 2 months. Last session, me and one of my policy analysts tried to do like a rhyme or reason of like when things would be referred based on numbers. It didn't work. There was no rhyme or reason to how or when things got referred. So while I would love to give you a timeline, and I myself would like a timeline, I unfortunately cannot give you that because it is really up to the will of the people who are sitting in power of the certain places, right? So the committee, the calendar, the lieutenant governor, all of those people sitting in power, which is why I made so much emphasis on those people. I place so much emphasis on those people. Any other questions about this process?
Yeah, Jennifer, I'm gonna come off mute. I had a question about, so you said that when a bill goes to the Senate from the House and they say they don't like the bill and they want to send that bill back and kind of have this meeting, will we also be notified of that process as well?
Yes. So if you go into TLO, you can, if you click on like notifications and you first on our practice, so our org obviously is a little bit different, right? Like we just click any, can be a pain in the ass because then you get emails that notify you that say, oh, your bill moved like a millimeter. And like, like you get all those notifications, but there is one on there that says like check for conference committee appointment. And so if you click any, you should be getting notifications that a conference committee was appointed for your bill. And if you're not paying really close attention to your bill though, it can happen without you noticing it. The trick is to, once it's been placed on conference, the trick is to then find out who the conference committee appointees are, because those are going to be the individuals that are going to keep whatever you want in the bill in or take whatever you want out.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? And definitely, yeah, thank you, Nikki. Feel free to come off mute, y'all, or throw it in the chat. And sometimes the chat pops up but doesn't. So folks in the room, let me know if I'm missing something.
I have a question. Can you, I don't know if you were going to get to it or not, but will you talk about the other two things the governor can do when a bill gets all the way to him?
Oh yeah, sorry, my bad. So I just dropped there on the vetoed bill. So he can veto the bill, right? Which I said can be overrode by the legislature with a 2/3 vote, and then he can sign the bill. When he signs the bill, then it goes into effect. Typically, a piece of legislation at the very bottom of the legislation stipulates when the law goes into effect. And so it's common, the most common time for it to go into effect is September 1st. That's why you see a bunch of like news drop that says, oh, it's September 1st, new laws go into effect. If not then January 1st. But it's not uncommon for the governor to say, actually scratch that, this takes effect now. And then the third one is an unsigned bill. An unsigned bill, for all intents and purposes, means that bill has passed and has become law. It's the same thing if he doesn't sign it. If he signs it, what you don't want is a veto. That's what you don't want. It's like sign it or don't sign it. I don't care, because if it goes unsigned, that still means that it becomes law. Signs just means that he recognizes it and that you can put that exclamation point on the feet. And then, like I said, the unsigned bill also becomes law. But so those are the three things. Any other questions? Let's see. And so if the governor, he has what, Justin, 2 weeks after session to sign?
Yeah, so 10 days from once the bill hits his desk, he has to either do something or not do something.
Yeah. So 10 days. So that's one timeline. The only timeline that we have. Any other questions? This is a great little graphic. I definitely recommend checking it out and looking at more, just like the little nuances and the little icons, so that you can know for sure how things are going. And again, and if it seems repetitive on the left-hand side, it's because it is, and it needs to be, because we have a bicameral legislature. And so what happens in one chamber needs to happen in another. All right. Now we get to it. Wait, can y'all hear it?
Steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee, but I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will, but today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." Then he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that they will, but today I'm still just a bill.
Listen to of those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm gonna live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be along. How I hope and pray that he will. But today I am still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the president vetoes me, I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again, and by that time you're so
By
old.
that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
He signed your bill. Now you're a law.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so you see, everything essentially that we just learned is Schoolhouse Rock tried to teach y'all a minute ago, and so definitely a little fresher, a little reminder, nostalgia, call back to our old school days in terms of what bills are and how they move, and just how slow it takes in order to do the process. I only have 2 more slides left. I think two more slides left, so I'm almost finished. We'll wrap up. Here we finally get to the legislature. As I said, the legislative committees are essentially how bills get out. Some key of particular interest to advocates, as I said, the Legislative Budget Board that deals with the money, the budget, the Texas Legislative Council that writes the laws, and then of course the Sunset Advisory Commission. And again, here's just kind of a definition of all of those entities and what they're responsible for. So finally, we reach our legislative committees of concern for the CJ project, at least for our criminal justice project at Texas Appleseed, and some of the ones that you all may want to pay attention to. Appropriations and finance are essentially the parallel of each other, both in Senate and the House. Why do we care about the money? Oftentimes, whenever you are unsuccessful at getting a piece of legislation or a bill heard or moved or listened to, the budget is an alternative to that. You can establish riders that dictate what a agency has to do with a certain amount of money. And so that is definitely another avenue for advocacy. Corrections in the House, county affairs, criminal jurisprudence that now has a special committee on juvenile justice. Formerly, there was a juvenile justice family committee that stood on its own, and that is now under criminal jurisprudence. This is a new committee, the delivery of government efficiency. This is very much mirrors the stance that the Trump administration is taking in terms of making sure that there is an efficient government at play. This is the committee that I said with 15 members, it's going to be really hard to be an efficient committee. With that many members, I think it has the most members in the House on a committee. Higher education, Homeland Security, Public Safety, and Veterans Affairs. That's where you hear issues like border issues, COP issues, things of that nature. And then, of course, public health. See, just checking the chat. Efficient government. Yeah, exactly. It's an oxymoron. On the Senate side, Business and Commerce, Committee of the Whole Senate. Now, the only instance in which the lieutenant governor can vote as a member of the Senate is whenever the Senate meets entirely as a committee. Prior to this year, I don't think I ever saw a Committee of the Whole Senate. This kind of worries me a little bit because it means that Lieutenant Governor has every intention on voting on some bills. And so definitely something to keep an eye on. Criminal justice is actually a really big change because Senator John Whitmire, who has presided over the Criminal Justice Senate Committee, is no longer there. He is now Mayor Whitmire of Houston. And so now the chairman who is over that is Pete Flores, and he is a former police officer, and so he runs that committee as such. Education K through 16, they kicked higher education out of the Senate. so this is the committee you have to see: Finance, Health and Human Services, Jurisprudence, which just means how the courts operate. State Affairs, which is a lieutenant governor's committee outside of the committee of the whole Senate. If the lieutenant governor is particularly interested in something, he is going to send it to State Affairs. And then, of course, transportation. Some of you may be asking, this is a lot of committees. Why aren't we just interested in criminal justice, criminal jurisprudence, and corrections? The truth of the matter is that, as we all know, criminal justice is an intersectional issue. And the matters that affect people in the criminal justice space don't just exist in the criminal justice space. And so to be able to address shortcomings of the educational system, the public healthcare system, the mental health care system that are contributing to the criminal justice space, we need to work in those committees. And so that's kind of just a rundown of the committees that you all may want to keep an eye on for this session. Last but not least, just someone asked earlier for dates. These are pretty much, and you can go and look up important dates for session. And it has all of these plus maybe one or two more. The rate of occurrence, our legislative session happens biannually for 140 days. It's known as the regular session. Whenever you see something that says 89th or 80, this year it's the 89th legislative session, you see 89th R. That's not them trying to like trademark anything. That's just them saying that it's a regular session. If a special session is called, instead of the R, you will see a 1 or a 2 or a 3. Every special session lasts 30 days. So that's why during the summer, when you hear Governor Abbott calling special sessions, there's one in June, one in July, one in August. Those are special sessions 1, 2, and 3. Off years are known as the interim. That's probably when we do the most work in terms of research is concerned. Charges are given for committees to study by the Speaker of the House and the Lieutenant Governor. So you do have interim charges in a way where you can weigh in very similarly that as you would in a committee hearing. It's just called an interim hearing, an interim charge hearing. And then it's the same thing. It's up at the Capitol. You go in committee rooms, you talk on the issue. The only difference is that it's not a law and no decisions are being made, no votes are being made. It's merely just a study of the issue. Session begins the first Tuesday of January, every first Tuesday of January. No, that's wrong. I don't know when January 14th. It's supposed to be the first Tuesday of January. This one is January 14th. Ends 140th day, aka sine die. That's the last day of session, which is June 2nd. As I said, we started bill filing on November 12th. That should say of 2024. So that was last year. That's when bills start filed. I don't even remember the count. Justin, do you know how many bills have been filed so far? Oh, you're muted.
Okay, yeah, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's like 2,500, if not close to like 3,000 at this point.
So that's just filed. So that's just filed.
And that's just
That's
bills,
just, yeah.
not joint
Yeah, that's
resolutions.
just filed. That doesn't mean, remember, we talked about legislative council. That doesn't count all the bills that legislative council has. In November, the second week after bill filing started, legislative council had upwards of 4,000 bills that they were filing on TLO. So Nikki's that's Nikki's. I don't want to jump too much into Nikki's presentation. So Nikki will show you how to find the bills filed and stuff like that. Yeah, of course. All right. And end of bill filing date is March 14th. So that means that no bills will be filed after this date, and stuff will be going very quickly after that bill filing date. Because at this point, it's not a matter of people trying to get stuff in, it's a matter of people trying to get stuff out. Here's some helpful links for resources of essentially where I pulled all my information from. Like I said, I'm going to be handing this over to Letitia and Kayla so that they can share it out with the rest of the group. But if there are any questions, any additional questions, I can definitely take them at this time. Comments, concerns, any of that, any thoughts y'all want to share?
Who do you, in your experience, is there anybody in the Senate that seems to be more tenant friendly that I could work with? My experience so far has been most of the people that represent the state of Texas are landlords. So is there anybody you think that I could connect with that I might have some success with?
I do know that housing is definitely on like the top of the lieutenant governor's mind. That doesn't mean that it's a priority, but I would check with who have you, and you, if you don't want to disclose, you don't have to, but who have you tried so far?
The usuals, everybody that's in my district, but with everything going on with immigration and I mean, honestly, just the state of the world, it kind of got pushed to the back burner.
Yeah, no worries. So I would try to start in state affairs. Give me one second. I'm looking up the committee membership. And if anyone else on the call has experience with senators who do tenant housing, definitely please feel free to chime in. Give me one second. In my head, I'm thinking Zaffarini. I'm thinking even Hughes, to be honest with you, even though Hughes is an R. And to be honest with you, that's kind of where you want to start, is with an R. My team, our teams at Texas Appleseed do things a little bit different sometimes, but my team definitely makes a habit of starting in the Senate, and then going over to the House, only because of the difficulty associated with the Senate. So honestly, I would try Hughes, I would try Parker, and I would try Zaffarini.
Do you mind typing that in the chat so I make sure I
Yeah,
have their names
absolutely.
correctly?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I got it.
Oh, thank you, Farah.
You're sketchy.
Always. All right. Thanks for that question. Anyone else?
I have a question. So, earlier you mentioned that one of the reasons why appropriations is important to keep an eye out on is because like the budget can be changed in order to like get something done that doesn't necessarily have to like be a bill. Just out of curiosity, can you give an example of that happening?
Yeah, for sure. So, let's see. I have a couple of them. Last legislative session, well, that has to do with appropriations. I'll give an example of, so back into, you have to excuse my examples because, as I said, I've been working in policy since 2011, and so I apologize if they're a little outdated. In 2007, the Texas Youth Commission, now the Texas Juvenile Justice Department, came under a lot of fire because of sex scandals and fight clubs. And you're like, wait a minute, isn't that happening now? Yes, it's continuing to happen. Doesn't make it a good thing, but the Texas Youth Commission essentially came under sunset review, and they actually were shuttered. They were shuttered down. They were abolished, as was the Texas Juvenile Probation Commission, and they were combined into the Texas Juvenile Justice Department. Now, us as advocates, one of the main things that we wanted to see done was the closure of state facilities. At one point here in the state of Texas, we housed over 5,000 kids in state facilities alone, and there were like upwards of 10 state facilities dedicated solely to housing juveniles. So what we wanted was for those facilities to be shuttered, and we wanted their capacity to be limited. We could not get that into a piece of legislation. So what we did was we tied the capacity, the cap of the number of kids that were supposed to be in an institution to the funding. So if a state facility came above the capacity marker, they lost their funding for state facilities. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And then you can definitely, so like, let's say, for instance, we attribute money to programming in a certain correctional facility or in TDCJ whatsoever, and we don't get a bill in that says that program needs to be assessed, evaluated, and so forth. In a rider, which is essentially just like a a requirement attached to the appropriations. You can simply state, out of the money dedicated to the programming, X amount needs to be dedicated to evaluation, reporting, blah, 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 to ensure that that gets done. So those are just a couple examples. Any other questions? Well, if there are no other questions, that's all I got for y'all, folks. I really appreciate y'all having me. Thank you all so much. I really look forward to seeing some of y'all up at the Capitol, to seeing y'all around. As I said, I know that they're going to be the hosts are going to be passing out information. I'm hoping that includes our contact information. And if any of you all would like to reach out to me for anything, definitely feel free. Kayla is our policy advocate with Texas Appleseed, and Ms. Farrah Merchant is our digital media manager. You can definitely reach out to either of the members of my team to contact us. We love to work with you all. If there's anything that we can help you all with, please let us know. And I hope that thank you, Farrah. And I hope that the rest of your presentation, the rest of your advocacy training goes great. And that for those of you participating in day 2, have a great time. Thank you so much, Kayla. Thank you, Leticia. Thank you to everyone who put this together. Thanks, Nikki. Thanks, y'all.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. So we're going to move on to our next presentation, which will be navigating TLO. We have Nikki Llewellyn here from the ACLU. Nikki is the policy and advocacy strategist with the ACLU of Texas. She was formerly the field organizer with Texas Advocates for Justice. And she's an artist, activist, and deeply rooted in the grassroots community in Houston. So thank you so much for being here, Nikki. And if I believe that you can just hit the share button at the bottom in order to share your screen for your presentation. And we're excited to hear from you.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Yeah, so I just want to start off. I'm going to put the TLO website in the chat, and that's for people who want to follow along. I want to start off this presentation by saying I put this presentation in mind for the person who was starting off. When I first started off was in Texas Advocates for Justice, actually, when Mo and he's on the call, we started off, I was trying to figure out how to navigate this system where they're talking about the ledge, they're passing bills that impacts our lives. And so it's very important that we know this information. And so this presentation will give you the basic layouts of the key need to know information for you. And so if you have any questions, feel free to come off of mute and ask that question, or if you want to ask a question in the chat, but we will have a section where we will address the questions that you may have. So below you see the TLO website, and I'm going to share screen. And I'm going to go to my presentation. And if folks have any issues with hearing, just please let me know. Say, hey, I can't hear. That's all right with me. Okay. So how to navigate the Texas Legislator Online, TLO. So these are the basic things we'll be covering. Actually finding TLO. Who represents me? Registering for TLO, bill search, and bill tracking. And we'll talk all about the committees. And this will be an interactive session, and that's why I invite folks to also come off of mute and join in the discussion. So finding TLO. What I like to do, and just an easy trick I like to do, is when I first started learning how to navigate TLO, is how do you find it? I just type TLO Texas in Google, or you can visit the website that is listed here and that I also put in the chat. But when you pull up TLO Texas, this is what you're going to see. It's going to look like this. And here is a bigger picture of that. So this is a reference point for you to just know, hey, I'm in the right place. One of the main things that you should know when navigating TLO is who represents you. And we'll have an interactive session on this as well. So I put together a video, and it's going to walk you through how to find out who represents you within TLO. I'm going to play that video. Please let me know if you have any issues with hearing that video.
All right.
Can y'all hear it?
This is the Texas Legislator
Yes.
online page. So if you see this, it looks the same, then you know you're in the right place. All right. So before we get into other topics, the first need to know is the who represents me. For those who don't know who represents them, you can find this information here at this website. Especially for advocacy, we know that it's important to know who represents you in case you have any questions or concerns. You can bring it to your legislator. Also, if you want to simply meet with them and introduce yourself, then it's also good to know this information as well. But this is a key tool in advocacy, so you know what bills your legislator is supporting, what they're working on, and you can also share your concerns. All right. So to find out who represents you, you scroll down until you get to the Who Represents Me section. All right. And you're going to put in your address. And for these purposes, I'm using Texas Southern University. All right. So I put in the address and I'm going to click submit. So what's going to come up is a pin on the address that you entered, and then the surrounding area of which those representatives serve. When you look below, you can see that they give you the information for who represents you in the U.S. Congress, who represents you in the Texas House, who your representative is for the Texas Senate, who represents you on the State Board of Education, and who are your U.S. senators. All right. So now that you got this information and you want to get back to the main site, you just go to the top, you press the arrow button to go back, click it, and then it's going to take you back to the main site. Hey, I hope that was clear for everyone. Are there any questions? I'm just going to pause it and ask, do folks have any questions about that particular process? And that was how to find your representatives. All right. So for those who are looking for finding their representatives, we're going to do an interactive session. So I put the timer on 3 minutes, and you will have 3 minutes for those who have access to their computer to look up who represents you. If you have any trouble or need assistance, then we will also be able to work through that with you. But I want to give you all 3 minutes to be able to, if you haven't done it before, or who knows, or you don't know who represents you, you will be able to take this time and to be able to navigate that website, get to it, scroll all the way down, and to see who represents you. And this was something that was very key, especially at Texas Advocates for Justice, where we had members that were going and we were doing advocacy days. So they would go and visit their representatives and talk to them about the concerns that they had, especially in the criminal justice system and various bills. And so I'm going to give everyone 3 minutes to look up who represents you. There might be an ad that plays before this, but we'll skip it. All right, the timer is set.
All right. So did everyone find who represents them? If there's something in the chat, let me see. Awesome, awesome. I see people are using the site to find out who represents them. Yes, yes. I'm so glad everyone was able to find out who represents them. Like I said before, that's very key. It's one of the things that Mo taught me at Texas Advocates for Justice. One of the first things that we found out when we started to do activism at the legislature is to find out who our representatives are, because they do serve us. We don't serve them. And that's something that we constantly have to keep in mind, is that we have to continuously express our interests and let them know that we're paying attention to what they are doing. Okay, so this is the TLO sign up. Now, for some people, this process looks very simple. It may be easy, but this is for people who have never navigated TLO before. So I'm going to move it here. Let's do this. All right. So the first step, when you go on this main website, now that we're here, we've looked up who represent us. You want to go to this login section right here, and you want to click on that button to log in. And once you click on that, what you're going to see is it's going to say new user. You want to click on new user. And after you click on new user, you want to fill in this information right here. And after you fill in all of this information, what's going to happen is they're going to say, hey, we got your request. We have sent a link to your email. Click on that link to verify that you are the person who requested to register for an account with TLO. So now that you went into your email, you've got your account, you're good to go. And congratulations, you are now TLO certified. Okay. Did anyone need help with that process? I constantly like to do question and answers because I know that this process can be difficult for some people, maybe easier for others, but some people, its process can be taxing. Yes, I agree, Letitia. Okay. All right, so I guess if there's no questions, we can go to the next slide. Bill search. So this is what we've all been wanting to get into. This is what we've been waiting for, now that we have everything set up. And I just want to make a comment that you're not able to do bill alerts if you don't have your account already set up. So that's why I walked us through this process, which seems kind of tedious. And it's like, okay, we know this already, or some of us may already know, but in order for us to be alerted on bills, we have to have an account that's already set up. Bill search interactive session. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop share, and I'm going to go back to the main TLO website. I'm going to do some bill search. Now, let's say that you've been hearing about this bill. For instance, this session, there's been a lot of bills that I've personally heard about, that I've been concerned about myself. And so if you happen to know that bill number, and you know that indeed that bill has been filed this year, you can look that bill up. You can also look up previous bills as well, but we're going to focus on this particular section. And so at the top, it will tell you that we are in the 89th legislative regular session. So when we look down at the search bar, we see legislator 89th regular session 2025. This will help us know where we're going and where we're trying to get to. So a bill that I've particularly been hearing about and what my organization, ACLU of Texas, is focused on is SJR 5. And if there's any questions, please feel free to come off mute. So SJR 5 is a bill that my organization have been focused on. We've been talking about, we've been doing advocacy around. And so what if I want to read more into this bill? I want to know who wrote this bill. What does it really say in this bill? Okay, so if you know your bill, if you know the bill number, you can simply type it in, SJR 5, Senate Joint Resolution 5, and you press go. And what that's going to take you to is key things that you need to know about this bill. So the first thing that comes up is the last action that was taken on this bill. The last action is that it's scheduled for public hearing today. This gives you the caption text. Now, the caption text is basically a summary of the bill that you're looking for. Now, this bill says proposing a constitutional amendment authorizing the denial of bail under certain circumstances to a person accused of certain violent or sexual offenses or of continuous trafficking of persons. The author, Senator Huffman, co-authors is Bettencourt, Carkhurst. It also shows you the various subjects that this bill addresses. This is a companion bill. So the companion bill is a bill that is identical to the bill that you're looking at, or it's very similar. This bill is already in the Senate Committee and the Criminal Justice Senate Committee. Down here, it gives you a history of the actions that this bill has taken. This bill was filed February the 7th, and it is now scheduled today for public hearing. And they also give you when the other authors signed on to the bill, when it was referred to the committee as well. But here's something I want to bring your attention to as well. So up here, when you see these buttons, this is where it says text, you will get the full bill. So you'll be able to read the bill in full. This is not just a caption text. You'll be able to read it for yourself. It gives you, again, the actions that the bill takes. So this just kind of breaks it down by each department. Authors, the caption. What I like about this is the bill stages. So for those of us that are people like me, I like visual representations. This gives you a good kind of graph of where the bill is at. Okay, so now we know that the bill has been filed, yes, but it is not made it out of Senate committee. So this bill has not reached this stage yet. So when you look up these bills, you'll be able to track which stage that this bill is at. Okay. And I'm going to go back because what I want to do is go into another way that we can look up particular bills. Now, are there any questions? Does anyone have any questions so far?
Hi, Nikki. Thank you for this presentation. Actually, I do have a question on the history tab that's there. I did see something that said council document. Yeah, I've seen this on the bills themselves too. Like this, I guess this ledge council coding. I don't know if you would know or anybody else in the call would know. Where do we find how do we decode that? Is there like a glossary or some kind of something somewhere? Just if y'all think about it, yeah.
I do not know what council document means. I just know that's 89th regular session. But for this part, is there anyone that do know what this means up here? Okay. What I will do, Mo, is I will get back to you with that. I'm going to research that myself and I'll put it down as something, and I will reach back out to you. And I'll also put my email in the chat. because whatever questions you all have that I may not be able to answer, I will definitely follow up with you when I get that answer. And like I said, for those who have questions, feel free to come off of chat, ask the questions that you need to ask, because this is for us to understand what's happening. And this presentation is for all of us. So what I want to bring your attention on, so we looked up the bill number, right? So folks know we can type in a bill number and we can see what this bill is about. But there's another way you can also look up bills. There's a word phrase. So you might not know exactly kind of which bill are you looking for. You might just want to know what's going on, or you heard about some type of bill, but you haven't been able to locate the exact bill number. So you know that it deals with something such as, does anybody have a phrase of something that they want to look up? Whether it's law enforcement, we've heard a lot about immigration, a lot on bail. Is there a topic that anyone is particularly interested in? And I'm inviting folks to come off chat.
How about interstate compacts, Nikki, possibly?
Interstate compacts? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So interstate compacts. Okay. So when we look here, it's going to bring up all of the bills that have that in the subject. They mentioned this, they have something to do with this. And so once you put it in that word phrase search, it's going to pull up every single bill. Now, some of them, this one only has 5, but some of them will bring up about 200, 300 results. And you'll have to kind of search through that and kind of maybe narrow it down what you're looking for. Is there a particular bill, Mo, or do you just want to click on one?
Yeah, let's get a step into curiosity.
Okay. So let's do this one by Hall. So if you click on this, and I've been through it before, if you click on this link right here, it's going to take you to the bill text. It's literally all of the bill text. It'll show you the author, but what it doesn't show you is what stage this bill is in, where this, what is the status of this bill? Has it made it out of committee? And so what I like to do is I like to click on this drop down button over here where you see the outline of the state of Texas. I like to click on the drop down and I like to click history. And what that does is it brings up everything that I need to know. So it'll just take me there. So we can see the history of the bill. You're able to see the text. So you're able to do it this way as well. All of the actions that was taken on the bill. So the last action that was taken on this bill is that it was referred to border security. This bill is HB 176. You can see the author. This is a companion bill. Now you see the author right here, the caption, bill stage. So it's the same process. But what we want to do with this bill is we want to say, well, you know what? This is a bill that's very, very important to me, right? And I want to be able to know when this bill has been referred to committee and when this bill has a hearing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this bill to the bill alert list. Sorry, I want to get a little bit more text on the bill. You do the caption. Okay, so it's relating to the provisions required in an interstate compact on border security. Okay, so I'm going to add this to my alert list, right? So we'll go through it again. So what I did was I went to add to my alert list, add to alert list, category. And what I did was this is SB 136, so it's Senate Bill 136. And so I want to know when this bill is going to be referred to to a committee. So I'm going to go to the Senate side, and I want to know when it's referred to committee in the Senate. Now I'm going to click on this. And a need to know is that there are several options you can choose. You can choose, when you choose this one, you can choose any category, and any category would be anytime this bill makes any type of movement, I will be notified. But right now, I just want to be notified when this makes it to committee, because that's when I'm going to be concerned about this bill. And I know I need to take action. So I'm going to save it as Interstate Compact, border security. Okay, can y'all see that? Okay, thank you. And I'm going to press OK. All right, let me kind of choose another one, because it's the same bill that I already did. So let me see. I want to put it on any activity. Let's just go here. And just any action that this bill takes, I want to be notified on. Let me just put, which one? Let's say it passed the Senate. All right, because I've already kind of saved it, so it won't let me save it in that category again. So I want to know when this bill passed the Senate. This is the Interstate Compact Border Security Bill, SB 136. Okay. Now I'm pressing OK. It says bill successfully added to alert list. All right. So now I've been able to successfully add this bill to my alert list, but this is my first time working TLO. And I want to know, well, how do I be able to go back to my alert list? How do I know it's there? How do I even check it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my TLO. I'm going to click that, my TLO, and it's going to pull up alerts. And I'm going to click on alerts. Okay. And I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to find the bill that I added on my alerts. This is SB 136 that we were just looking at. I want to know when it was referred to committee and Interstate Compact. That is a comment that I put. For the comment section, you can put kind of any comment that lets you know what this bill is about.
Hi, Nikki, when you get a moment, we have a question in here.
Okay, we can ask the question right now.
So from my understanding, this TLO is for Texas only, right?
Yes, for Texas only.
Okay, so if we wanted to look up a bill that is for the whole, how would we do that?
You said for who?
Okay, so if we wanted to look up a bill concerning the immigration laws that are being passed now, how would I be able to look that up if it's not considered a Texas bill trying to be passed? Am I making sense?
Like national legislation.
Federal. Okay.
Yeah, so national legislation, that I will not be able to provide you with the information on. That will probably be in us.gov, Senate. But this is specifically for Texas, what's happening in Texas. This is just a Texas legislator. This is everything that they're doing in Texas. So if you wanted to look up any immigration bills that dealt specifically with the state of Texas, you will be able to look that up. But as far as bills that are passed in the Congress, you would have to look that up And I will, I'll provide you a website for that, but I don't have the information for that. If anyone does, feel free to, you can come off mute and, or share that information in the chat, because that's very important, that we have all of the tools that we need.
Share it in the chat.
I was
But
gonna,
thank you, Nikki.
Nikki, I was gonna hop on real quick. This is Mo. I was gonna share that I went to a conference about a year ago, the Rare Disease Conference in Washington, D.C., and the Every Life Foundation has like a lot of legislative advocacy tools that could be used and y'all can leverage and to help you kind of find stuff. But your best bet for researching federal stuff is contact your congressperson. Yeah.
Okay. So we've done our bill lookup. Let me see what is next on the list. I'm gonna go back to my presentation. Sorry, y'all, I'm hopping from 2 different places. All right. Okay, so now we're on the committee. All right, do y'all see the main website? So when you look up the committee, this is gonna bring us full circle. When you look up who represents you, and so when I looked up who represents me, what I found is Jolanda Jones represents me in the House. So what I want to do is on the main site, I'm going to go to members and I'm going to click on members. And this is in the Texas House. So the Texas House and the Texas Senate both have their separate links. So you can look up on the Texas House, who are all of the members in the Texas House? Now that I know who represents me, I would like to see how have they voted on, what have they done? So Jolanda Jones represents me. I'm going to go all the way down till I get to Jolanda Jones. I'm going to click on it. And this information that it gives me the district that she serves. It gives me the location of her office in Austin at the Capitol. It gives me the phone number of her office at the Capitol. But it also gives me, if I'm in Houston and I'm not able to make it to the Capitol, but I have a concern, I have her district address. So I know where she is in Houston. As of now, she hasn't been assigned to any committees in the House. And I can also look at all of the bills that she's authored, sponsored, co-authored, and co-sponsored, and amendments that she's authored. So I want to just look at what are the bills that she's worked on. So this gives you a list of everything, of all of the bills that she's worked on. So you can see how they voted, how your representative voted on various issues. Okay. We're going to go back. And you can do that for any member of the House. You can do that for any member of the Senate. You can also do that in the Senate. We were talking earlier about committees in the House. So you can click on the committees in the House, and you can see the various members that are on these committees. Right now, I haven't seen the House is moving kind of slow. So right now, let's see, I've clicked on the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee. So the committee doesn't have any member assignment. So that means that none of the House members have been assigned to this committee yet. Bills in and out of committee, likely there are no bills in and out of committee. No bills have been reported because they don't have any members as of now. But this is a way where once it gets going, once we get later into the legislative, they'll start assigning committees, and you can look up all of the committees in the House. So whatever issue you want to focus on, I know that we've mentioned so far immigration bills. So Homeland Security, we can look at who's on that committee. We're able to look at who's on an elections committee, who's on a criminal jurisprudence committee, juvenile justice committee. So all of these committees, you can kind of look up and see who's on that committee. And this is on the House side. I want to bring your attention to the Senate side. So let's look up the Senate. It shows you who are all the members of the Senate. I don't think we have to go through that again, but well, let's go through it. It shows you all of the members in the Senate. Okay. You find out who represents you, or you just want to look up a member and see how they voted. Let's go to Bettencourt. Shows you everything, their address when they're in Houston. So you can go visit their address if you live in their city and you have an issue, you can go there, or you can go visit them at the Capitol, or call their office. And these are all of the committees that Senator Bettencourt currently is on. So it shows you the list of committees. It shows you the list of bills he's authored and kind of what he's done since he's been there. Gives you a great track record for reference. In the Texas Senate, you can look up the various committees. Now, one committee that I've been watching a lot and made a couple of office visits to already is the Criminal Justice Committee. I'm going to just click on that. And so in these committees, their committee is already, members in the Senate have already been assigned to the Criminal Justice Committee. You can see who the chair of that committee is, who the vice chair is, who are the members. But why is this important to know? It's important to know because certain bills are in those committees. And so if there's a bill that you feel that is harmful to the community, or a bill that you feel that you would love to support, or you would like to ask more questions on, you can go to all of these members. And you can tell them what you don't like about the bill, what you don't understand about the bill. Or if you support the bill, you can also tell them that. But below, you will see bills in and out of committee. This is going to bring up a range of bills. So they already have bills in their committee. And it'll tell you the action that the bill is. Like we mentioned before, today, there's actually a public hearing on one of these, several of these bills actually, related to the expansion of the denial of bail, and that certain bills that we see here. So there's a hearing today on these particular bills. So TLO gives you a wealth of information that you can look at. It's a tool where you can track and you can see what's going on at your legislator. And it's something that I feel that we should all be plugged into, especially in this legislative session. We'll be able to find what we need. There are other particular links, such as if there are things that we don't know, there is how do I, there's a FAQ portion on the main site where you can say, well, how do I follow the status of a bill? How do I do this? So if there's something that I didn't explain or that wasn't answered today, you can always go on these links and you can look it up. Are there any questions? Okay. So yes, so gonna go home. I'll go through some couple things right here. Remember that when you go on this main website, you can find out who represents you, record those people, and it's very helpful to know how they voted on certain things. So when you're doing your advocacy or when you're looking up bills, you can see the committee. I want to do something where I want to pull up SJR 5 again. Because I want to show something in this bill, something that this bill will show you. Let me go back. Let me go into the history of the bill. All right. So once you're looking up this bill, this is something that I do want to show you that you can find right here. So if there's a bill you see, such as SJR 5, that expands the denial of bail, it says Senate committee, right? So we went over that part, but you can also click right then on that Senate committee, and it'll take you to everyone who's on that committee. So if you see that this bill has a hearing coming up, like it does today, there's a hearing going on, you will be able to reach out to everybody on that committee and express your concerns. So the information is right there at your fingertips. It's just about being persistent and, and doing what you can to advocate for yourself and for your community. So if there's no more questions, I think
There's a question in the chat. It says, where can
Okay.
you find if your representative is an R or a D, by Sharon?
Okay, so let's go to it. So when you go to your members here, let's go to Jolanda Jones. And I'm not sure if they actually will tell you that information on here. I think you would actually have to pull them up on a different website that I go to. Mo, is there a way on this website you can see? Because I know that I usually go to Ballotpedia, and that's what tells me if there are a Republican or a Democrat.
Your guess is about as good as mine. I usually go to Texas Tribune. They have an elected officials directory, and it has a link to. I think it has a link to their website and even like a map, I believe.
But you go to
It,
the
it does it
Texas
does state what
Tribune.
it states what their party is. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, Texas House. And so that is, thank you, Mo. Mo taught me so much. Yeah, so this is the TexasTribune.org, the link that Mo put in the chat. This takes you to a list where it just outlines if they're Democrat or Republican. So it's just an easy way to find this information out. These are people I'm looking at now in the House. Yeah. So now we have that information. Are there any more questions?
I have a question, and I know this was like focusing mostly on how to use TLO, so it's okay if somebody else is going to talk about this later. But from what I understand, so it looks like if a bill has already been sent to the committees and you want to like support that bill, it would be best to contact the committee members who have authored the bill or who are like in charge of that. But what are some helpful ways as a community advocate, or like how could your personal representative be beneficial to you as a community advocate? Like what are some reasons you would want to contact them if they're not a part of a committee on a bill you're interested in? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, also you want to bring it to their awareness. That's why I told them about it. And then also they have a vote on the bill. So that's the reason why I would reach out to them. Is there anyone else that want to comment on that?
Oh, and just one thing I wanted to add, Nikki, is that um, they like to say they're bipartisan and whatnot and whatever, but it's like really you should ask your representatives. It's to help you because like I know one time I had a representative, what was it, Senator Miles. I got his help with printing out hearing document handouts. So like it was about 20 copies, and like I don't have money for that, and the org didn't have money for that either at that time. So you go to your reps and they'll print that out for you. It was like 150 pages I didn't have to print out. So it's very, utilize them.
Yeah, and then another thing too, just with your personal rep, if there's something that, a bill you don't understand, I went to representatives and just simply just asked them about it. What does this mean? How will this impact our district if this passes or if this goes into the House or if this gets into the Senate? How will this impact us? I'm urging you to please vote this way. So I would say that's a reason to also reach out to them. And for this Senate hearing that's up today, the criminal justice hearing with the denial of bail for people accused of certain offenses. And then there's also another bill that's up which outright denies people bail that are undocumented. What I did was, though it was in the Senate, I still went to the House and I put them on alert. So it was a Senate joint resolution. And I said, hey, this is in the Senate right now. I'm pretty sure that it will reach the House, and I just want to put you on alert to what is happening. So that's also a reason for you to be able to reach out to your representatives and then to also share what your values are. That you are paying attention and to let them know that, I'm paying attention to your vote and how you vote on this bill.
And one thing I wanted to add real quick, Nikki, is that for me, I like to have a paper trail. So like, when hearings happen, they're like, oh, Mo, you didn't tell me this. You should have told me this. So like you send them emails, you call them, you talk to their staff, and you have a paper trail. You go to the hearing and like in 2 months from now, you're like, I told you 6 months ago, I told you 3 months ago, or I told you during the 85th legislative session about this, right? So kind of like it keeps it on the record, and and if you want to do media stuff, that helps out too.
Definitely. Think we all know now who represents us. We know whether they're Republican or Democrat now. We're able to look up save bills. So just use this TLO website as a tool for you to do what you need to do in your activism and in the community. Oftentimes go to this website and I save particular bills that I'm interested in and just keep a track of them on, how they're moving, what they're doing. But it's very important for us to just be delved into this process and get other people involved. This is what the people who try to control the narrative don't want us to know. They don't want us to know that these tools are available for us. We can email our legislators, we can call them if we're not able to physically just show up in Austin. We can show up in the Houston office, in district, or whatever city you live in. You can show up in the district office and advocate. But yes, if there is no questions or comments, I am done.
We can do that. Okay. Thank you, Nikki, so much for taking the time to meet with us and speak with us.
Thank y'all.
And then we have 3 more presentations to finish out today, and it will be we're going to speak about self-care and mental health, advocating on the floor and in the committee, and tools of the trade.
Brings the conversation to not only the mind and mental health and self-care, but also the body and how stress shows up in our body. So we're going to talk about the 3 levels of impact and then give you some strategies on how to protect your nervous system through boundaries, self-care, and a few different types of healing. And then we have our additional resources at the end. If you have questions throughout, Kayla, I'm fine if y'all shout out questions if I miss them in the chat, or we can save them till the end, whatever works.
So we have a couple presenter goals. We would like for participants to be able to name what's happening in your mind and body, as well as consider and protect your mind and body during the personal testimony process. So hopefully you feel like you come out with that. And the next slide is, how can connecting your mind and body during public testimony help you? So really to help you manage stress levels and cope with triggering memories or experiences as they happen, to reduce short-term and long-term burnout, and then to empower you to create sustainable options for self-care and wellness. So what is the nervous system and why is it important? The nervous system is really the connection between your brain and your body. So you can see on this next slide, all of the blue is where your brain connects to your nervous system. So when we think about, often we talk about mental health and taking care of your mind, Vanessa and I feel like what we don't talk about as much is the nervous system. And the nervous system is really going to be what shows up for you as you're preparing for testimony, as you're giving testimony, as you're recovering from testimony. So the nervous system is a network of nerves and cells. It controls how you think and feel, and it also controls your ability to move your body. This next slide has an image of nerve endings. I think it's really fascinating to think about what's happening within our body and what's lighting up. And these nerve endings are constantly growing and lighting up in different ways based on our previous experiences. So the nervous system allows us to interact with and respond to our environment. So for example, if you're in a room and it's cold, you're going to get goosebumps. If you're going outside and it's sunny, you're going to put sunglasses on, right? That is your brain telling your body to do something. And it's just a real simple way that your nervous system shows up. Without this, we wouldn't be able to perceive the world around us, move our bodies, or even think clearly. So the nervous system is the connector and the communicator from your brain to your body. It allows you to have thoughts, feelings, and memories, coordination, movement, controlling your five senses, sleep, heartbeat and breathing, fight, flight, or freeze, and digestion. So how does this impact you during public testimony? So to break that down even further, first, it helps you walk up to the podium. Even kind of move your legs and move your arms and make sure you have your paper. It helps us be vulnerable with strangers. It controls our five senses. So allowing you to read the room, to read the committee, to be prepared with what you need to do that. It allows you to get sleep the night before and the night after. It lets you feel hungry to be able to eat before or after without having nausea or stomach ache. Helps you stay calm when you're giving your testimony and when you're being questioned specifically. It helps manage passionate feelings and emotions that surround a topic or a bill that you might be presenting on or working with. And then it allows you to have thoughts and feelings and memories around sharing your personal stories, which are your history. Do we have any questions about that nervous system before we kind of move on? Questions, thoughts, wonderings?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm just curious when it says, sorry about that. I'm just curious when you say, like that the nervous system impacts. Oh, okay, impacts you during, okay, so how the nervous system impacts you during public testimony, it impacts you just like in staying calm. Is that does that mean, or what you saying by that, like, is that it takes you being able to calm and regulate your nervous system in order to stay calm giving testimony? Is that what you mean by that?
Your nervous system is what sends the signals of calmed or stressed. So if you can balance your mind and body, then you can feel those things. Okay, so possible symptoms of an imbalanced nervous system. So those increased feelings of anxiety and irritability speak to an imbalance or overactivation of your nervous system. Difficulty sleeping, digestive issues, muscle tension, your heart rate. low energy levels, low motivation, not being able to focus, feeling disconnected from your environment around you, and not feeling motivated to move your body. So kind of, Kayla, what we're talking about, right? Like you either have a balanced or an imbalanced system. And so hopefully when we talk about some of this self-care, that will begin to help you see what skills you could use to create that balance.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the three levels of impact on the mind and the body. So what the three levels are is a framework that we use in social work to help us understand the world and how we can repair it. And so like understanding the different levels of society. And so the first one we start understanding is micro. So this is the individual level, what happens to you and what happens to your immediate family. Primary trauma occurs at this level. So when we think about micro, really it's just the personal. When we think about meso, that is a little bit bigger than that. And so community organizations, ethnic groups, political groups, in this case, it would be the formerly incarcerated person community. And so we're going to touch on the secondary trauma as well and how that occurs at this level. And then lastly, we have the macro. And so macro refers to the structures in society as a whole. So this includes the criminal justice system, the education system, and the legislative system. And so if we look at the picture on the graph, we can see that these are all within one another. And so what happens, it's like visually what happens at the macro will impact the meso, will impact the micro. And so, for example, thinking about something like free lunch for students at the macro level, that means everybody is going to have the opportunity to have a free lunch. Meso, that means that organizations have the opportunity to not worry about um, helping children eat and so they can focus on other things. And at the micro level, well, your stomach is full, you're able to focus on your education. And so being able to understand how the macro impacts our communities, impacts us individually is our goal. So I'm going to talk about primary and secondary trauma. Um, so primary trauma is what we go through personally, what we share, a response to a traumatic life event. And so when we talk about primary trauma, this is our own experience that we may carry as people who, go through our own life experiences, right? Everybody has different traumas that they carry, but it is at the individual slash familial experience. And having primary trauma can lead to PTSD. But I wanted to talk about secondary trauma because of the type of work that you all are doing. And secondary trauma is the trauma that you all may experience by witnessing or being affected by witnessing somebody else's trauma. And so that is not trauma that you personally experience, but instead witness other people experience. And your empathy is what causes you to experience that secondary trauma. Your empathy is your ability to put yourself in their situation, put yourself in their shoes. And so there is a lot of overlap between primary trauma and secondary trauma. As you can see, their shared symptoms are basically the same. Secondary trauma mirrors symptoms of PTSD, and primary trauma can lead to PTSD. And so
I'll jump in,
because
Vanessa, real
what's
quick
that?
too.
Oh
I'll
yeah.
jump in just to connect the previous slide and this one. We felt like giving you the three levels of impact. So in folks that I've known and experiences that we've had within the community when you're working within community and experiencing that secondary trauma. So I'm frozen.
Yes, we missed like most of it.
All of it? Okay. Our Wi-Fi is not the best. So hopefully I will remain unfrozen. But the previous slide and this slide, the connection in my mind is you're not only walking up to the podium carrying your story, you're also carrying the story of your community.
They'll come back. They'll come back.
Community and then carrying the larger story or the world area. So we really wanted to, oh, and like Vanessa, maybe you can kind of, did you hear what I was saying or trying to say?
Yeah, we want to be able to kind of help y'all make the connection between working with your own individual traumas and then working with systems and also people who are going through violence and what that can do for you. And so because of your empathy, you are able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. You might experience secondary trauma, but because of your own traumas and your sympathy, being able to remember what it was like to be in that situation, or knowing what your loved ones were experiencing when you were in that situation, that adds to the risk of experiencing PTSD symptoms, and it can put you more at risk to lean toward unhelpful coping mechanisms. So being able to know that, like, as you're working in this field, you're navigating your own trauma and then possibly secondary trauma as well from working with people who have been impacted by violence. And so I also want to mention, in addition to secondary trauma, we wanted to make the distinction with compassion fatigue. Because have we heard about compassion fatigue before? Yes, so compassion fatigue is that that experience of working with people who are victims of trauma in a stressful environment without having tools to recuperate and manage that stress. And so by continuing to work with in these situations without being able to take a moment to tend to yourself, it leads to burnout. So the compassion fatigue is a more broad experience. Secondary trauma is you being personally affected to witnessing someone else's trauma. And so it is more specific to your reaction and your empathy, because some of us are better at like being able to distance ourselves between what is happening to us and what is happening to the people that we're trying to work with. But if we see like the shared the overlap between compassion fatigue and secondary trauma, it's the same. It can lead to desensitization and apathy. Sleep, it can mess with our sleep. It can lead to us becoming numb and being heightened in our anxiety. And so we see a lot of similarities between secondary trauma, compassion fatigue, and primary trauma. And so being able to understand that, like, you carry your own, you might have a reaction to other people being affected by violence. And then on top of that, if you're constantly working in an environment that doesn't let you take a break, that's a lot on your nervous system. And we're trying to encourage y'all to understand your nervous system and how all of these things impact it, so that way you have the tools to be able to navigate these experiences. Any questions so far on secondary trauma and compassion fatigue?
We have a question right here.
Yes.
My question is, how can we determine compassionary fatigue from secondary trauma? Since you said the similarities are there, what will actually stand out from the other, if that makes sense?
No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, how will we know we got compassion fatigue versus secondary fatigue? Because this is the first time I ever heard of compassion fatigue, and I'm thinking that we was talking about this morning, but I didn't have a name for it.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
Wait, what was that?
Oh, I said I'm gonna let y'all answer that one.
Oh,
Well, and I'm
I
gonna
have an
shout
answer,
out.
but y'all are the professionals, so go ahead.
I'm going to shout out Vanessa too. So one of the reasons I invited her to be a part of this presentation is because she did her graduate thesis project on this. So we're going to share that link with you as well. We're going to make sure that's up on our website. And then that'll lay out some of what you're talking about or your questions as well. So go ahead, Vanessa.
Yes, so the thing is they share a lot of similarities, but compassion fatigue is the more broad, and then secondary trauma is more acute. And so when we think about compassion fatigue, it is like our day-to-day work experience, being exposed to stressful working environments, and then not having the ability to come back and tend to yourself and um, like be able to process what you went through. And secondary trauma is when you hear or see somebody else going through a traumatic event and you putting yourself in their shoes. And so that can happen right away. Whereas compassion fatigue is a more gradual thing that can lead to burnout. Secondary trauma can also lead to burnout if you are constantly witnessing other people experience violence. And then, yes, that's a great question. Secondary trauma and vicarious trauma are interchangeable terms. Yes.
One
Did
of the
that?
things,
Oh, yeah, go
well,
ahead.
I was going to add to what it makes me think of is like you might not be giving particular testimony that day, but you're there as a support person. You're there listening and helping and reading over testimonies and sitting outside, and you leave that day and you feel exhausted, numb, high anxiety. That's a day that you have existed in a lot of secondary trauma. You've heard other people's stories, you've held other people's stories versus maybe you giving your own testimony and leaving, right? That's going to be more, oh, my fatigue was activated. Does that help?
Y'all are muted. I don't know if you are speaking right now.
Yes. No, good.
Okay, I apologize. I was wanting to know if it's possible, can we get compassionate or secondary fatigue from our environment or from an environment that we're in when we're testifying? Does that make sense to say that what's going on in the atmosphere can affect how we think, feel, and breathe?
No, absolutely. So that's what we were trying to connect between the macro, meso, and micro level. So definitely your environment can make you feel like you're fatigued and can lead to secondary trauma, especially if it's an environment in which you don't have mechanisms of support to process like what you've witnessed or experienced firsthand.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, it makes me think of too, like sometimes just doing rounds and visiting offices, and you might not be, again, like the one talking, but just the kind of response you experience from people as you're walking around, as you're trying to, advocate or speak to someone in their office is different than testimony, but you might also leave really tired that day because everybody's approached you with a negative attitude or not wanted to hear you, or you're just hearing and seeing that in other folks you're working with as well.
Yeah. And if you're the type of person that is very empathetic and you've also been through what they've been through, it's an added layer of my feelings and holding theirs while I'm in their shoes. So it's a lot to hold. And so we want to kind of help y'all understand that and then get to what can you do now that you understand the different layers of impact that you are experiencing.
Is it okay if I add something? Can I?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to add something around like the secondary trauma piece, is that like, if there's. If there is a trauma that is like a secondary trauma that's being activated within the body from a secondary like experience, like from being outside of the experience, then that secondary trauma will only exist. It will only come up if it is hitting a trauma that's already with it. Do you know what I'm saying? So like if it's not already in you, like if there's not already a wound there, that experience is hitting within you, then I highly doubt that you're gonna experience it as a secondary trauma. It's much more likely that then it would be empathy and just being in the energy of a lot of heaviness and emotions and things. And so if that isn't like kind of cleared and like taken care of at the end of your day, like, okay, that was a lot, it was a lot of emotion, it was a lot of heaviness, I was leaning into that, I was holding a lot, and then you kind of leave that environment and then take care of yourself, right? Like, take care of your body, take care of your mind, which I'm sure they're gonna get into, right? All of the tools and things, like, to be able to like, take care of yourself after that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I do want to say that with secondary trauma, yes, if especially if you have a similar experience, that wound can be reopened. But what has been seen is if you are um again and again and again exposed to similar violent or similar traumas from somebody else, and you are very empathetic without being able to distance yourself, you can experience secondary trauma. So even by witnessing the violence of our laws on our phone screens, like on social media, that can impact that. And because we're so exposed to it on the daily, it really can lead to similar symptoms of PTSD. We can also get nightmares from what we have witnessed and not be able to sleep and become anxious, even if it is not our personal experience. But
I get what you're saying. I guess that was the part that I was kind of missing there. And so I'm glad that you touched back on that, is like that the secondary trauma, like witnessing it, not just like hearing about it, like hearing about somebody, talking about their trauma. This is like, okay, like if you like witnessing things that are violent or harmful to another person makes
yeah.
complete. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm really happy that y'all feel comfortable to like be in a collaborative conversation. Um, so now we're going to be talking about protecting your nervous system.
Yeah, so there's so many resources that we've listed a bunch at the end. And if we're able to kind of get through the content, I want to go through those as well. Or if you think we have enough time, Vanessa, I can kind of touch on those too. But the biggest one for me as a person and also as a professional has been boundaries. When I was growing up, I really only was modeled physical boundaries. So you're bugging your sister, leave her alone. Your music's too loud, close your door, right? Like everything was kind of this directive of you're doing something wrong, fix it. That's the only boundary experience that I had. So as I was working with folks within the community, I was so shocked to learn that there are 6 types of boundaries. So we have put a couple hyperlinks in here. There's a website called Therapist Aid where we get a lot of our cheat sheets from. And so these are a few of those. But Vanessa, if you can pull up the types of boundaries page. So boundaries are the limits that we set for ourselves. It helps us separate our personal and our professional lives. And there are 6 types of boundaries, and there are a few that I think specifically impact what we were talking about, right? Like being highly empathetic, supporting communities that have experienced violence, having experienced violence yourself, and how you share that. You're going to have to do what it says download. Go to download down there. Yeah, download worksheet. So this is what the link will lead you to. If you click download worksheet, that green bar, it'll pull up the actual page. So we've got physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, intellectual boundaries, material boundaries, and time boundaries. So material boundaries is like when you lend something to someone, you want it back, you say, I need it back by this time, right? So basically like kind of having to deal with material objects or items. Emotional boundaries is kind of some of what we've been talking about, right? So if someone's oversharing with you and you're starting to feel emotionally fatigued, being able to say, hey, I love you and I need to go take care of myself. I need to go get some water. Can we regroup, right? Being able to recognize when something is overwhelming your nervous system, like we've kind of been discussing. So you might start to feel that fatigue, that numbness, hungry, not hungry. Then that kind of tells you, whoa, this is crossing my boundary. The intellectual, time, and emotional, to me, those three boundaries go together. So as you're describing something to someone, if someone asks you a question about a specific bill or a specific experience, it's going to pull on these three things. So emotionally, you're going to be activated in the sense of, this is what's happened to me. They're asking me specifically about this. What's my boundary with this? Do I have as much time as I need to share the whole story? Do I have the energy to share the whole story? Or do I just pick one or two things that I can share to reach what they're asking? And that's that intellectual boundary, is only you know what's true for you. So you know your experience, you know how it impacts that bill, you know why you're standing there. And so I would really encourage you guys to kind of just read through these and see what resonates with you about emotional, intellectual, and time boundaries, and how you can use that to set boundaries. So we're going to go to, let's see, can you click on the top link, Vanessa? The one, that very top one. So the first sheet we've linked is how to set those boundaries. So now that you're kind of aware, okay, I'm going to focus on these three. I love this because even though I'm a professional, Vanessa, can you make it any bigger? Just the what to say, what to do. In my own personal life, setting boundaries has been really hard because of my trauma and my experiences. So I love this. I'm not comfortable with this. Please don't do that. Like, these are good reminders for me when I'm going into a hard conversation. I'm going to write some of these down. I'm going to write one on my hand that says not at this time, or I'm drawing the line at sharing this part of my experience so that you can have some tools. I also like the what to do. It's just a good reminder for me. Use confident body language, be respectful, plan ahead. So when we're thinking about, wow, today it's all about me, I'm going to be doing this, this, and that thing, I'm going to plan ahead to think about some of these things that might activate me and how I could set a boundary for that. And then compromises can happen when appropriate. So you're in and having a conversation with someone, they ask a question that's maybe too far. You can say, I can't answer that question for you, but we can go on and talk about these next points. So knowing what your limit is going to be and preparing for that. And then you want to click on the second one. I just want to walk y'all through these so you can know what you're looking at.
This one?
The boundaries or limits, no, they're very. Yeah, so we also have just a worksheet on creating work-life boundaries. These are all really simple, but very helpful. So we just wanted to know that we're linking those there. So you can set boundaries by saying, I'm only going to dedicate this time for work. You can go back to the slide, Vanessa. I'm only going to dedicate this time for work. When I was a school social worker, I worked at 7 campuses. It was extremely stressful, and I found myself bringing it home with me. So I would wear a lanyard for work. So when I got in my car, I would take off the lanyard, put it in my glove compartment. I had some lavender spray. I bought like at Bath and Body Works, and I would spray the lavender spray to tell my nervous system, we're done for the day. We can calm down and we can relax. So just some ways to think about, how can you set times for personal and work? Can you say no to a project or a conversation that would lead you to burnout? So setting that boundary, I can't answer that question for you. And having a colleague maybe come in and say, these are our next points, right? So that you're kind of given the chance to pause, like Vanessa has said, and sort of regulate yourself. And then if you're able to tend to your feelings as they're impacted by work. So I was just talking with a client and, someone said something to her and her first thought was, they're going to think I'm dumb. And my invitation to her was pause right there and recognize I am having a thought that doesn't feel good. And I can drink a sip of water. I can say, I need to go to the restroom. Give your body a break when you feel that it's getting activated. So taking that time to do that as well. Questions about that? I feel like I gave you guys a lot to think about there. Okay, so our next slide is kind of a continuation. You're going to see a couple more of these images, but there is a Medium article that I love and have used so many times, and it's not a scientific article. It's just written by someone who like analyzed and thought about self-care for themselves. So it's called the unspoken complexity of self-care. Something that we find in the practice, and especially when self-care became a buzzword, it was like, oh, just self-care. Well, you're left thinking, am I doing it right? What is it I'm supposed to be doing? This is really hard. Why am I doing this? Or it's like, go to yoga, do this and go. It's very activity based. So we love this article in the sense of it differentiates. Vanessa, for some reason, it's showing like an image on top of self-care, the self-care image.
Yeah, it's funny. It's because I screenshotted it from Canva.
Okay.
But I can go to the article and go
Yeah,
to the
perfect.
pictures there.
So self-soothing and self-care are different. So when you get home and all you want to do is play your video game and turn your brain off, that is self-soothing. When you do something that you're soothing your nervous system and you're not necessarily doing something that helps you find meaning or support your growth and groundedness. So can you go to the self-soothing one, Vanessa? And then make it a little bigger. So those are activities that provide distraction and or comfort in difficult times. So taking a bath, binging on your TV show, getting into nature, cuddling your pets. Those are all things that are going to provide distraction to your nervous system. Self-care is more in alignment with the goals and tasks that you have for yourself and how you feel grounded. So going to therapy, meditating, setting and keeping your boundaries, getting a massage. So that's kind of the difference. And I feel like that's very helpful because you can say, I just need to self-soothe. I need to unplug. I need to binge my show. And that's what I need to do for the rest of the day. Yeah.
I feel like that's a big one we always turn to. Like, I'm going to take a bath.
Yeah. So that leads us to kind of the next part that Vanessa's going to talk more about, which is healing in community.
Yes, so I like to promote healing in community. It is just as, if not more important than self-care. When we think about who we are as people, we're social beings, and there's only so much that we can do alone. And so this article also talks about healing in community and what community care can look like. So as advocates in this space, y'all are already such an integral part of this kind of work. And just a reminder that like working in these kinds of organizations is what makes the work sustainable. And you already have like a network of people that you can turn to and lean on. And so just encouraging you to reach out to them and create that system sustainably because y'all might be going through things separately. And we're doing work together means that you could also process work together. And so these are some examples of community care, child care, free cycle and buy nothing groups on Facebook. Right? There's all kinds of groups, intimate relationships outside of traditional romantic and childhood norms. So people that you can really be vulnerable with, credit unions, co-housing, like community care really is like systems that support us without having to rely on structures. We can just rely on our neighbors, and that is very important for people who don't have access to help and support at the structural governmental level. And so just a reiteration that primary and secondary trauma can lead to burnout and frying your nervous system. And this is not your fault. Like, the system was designed to make it difficult to advocate for things and create change. And instead of, blaming ourselves and blaming our limitations, recognizing that this is not our fault and we are not doing this alone. So turning to our communities to continue doing that work, because when one of us is down, another one helps pick us back up. So some things to consider with your communities is to allocate time to share and process what you have witnessed, what you have experienced, to create a supportive environment to relieve that stress. Because who can best understand you but the people who are doing the work alongside you. Similarly, dedicate moments to share joy with loved ones to reinforce that sense of community and support. I like to say that, like, joy is so much, like, just as important as like anger and action. Creating action is so much based on like that feeling, that drive, but also joy is what um keeps us hopeful, keeps us feeling like, okay, like this is also light and this is also sustainable. So we have to have a good balance. And just because we are dealing with such heaviness and violence, that doesn't mean that we're not allowed to be joyful with one another and express our joy. Like, when we think about learning from people in our histories, right? We can see so many displays of joy, and when we think about like indigenous communities and their expressive dances and how they incorporate joy into their healing practice. So incorporating very, very intentional joy together. And then lastly, channeling grief into meaningful action. What can you do with your friends to advocate for a better world in your community? But because y'all are doing a lot of this work already, is like, have you focused too much on action and not enough on rest? And maybe even resting together with your groups. So making sure that we're all taking care of one another, kind of thing.
I really like the idea of joy. There's a word that's, glimmers. So we talk a lot about like what are triggers, but we don't talk about what are glimmers. And glimmers are bright spots, joy spots. So before you end your day with your team, or before you end your day for yourself, think about, what's something that brought me joy today? What's something that someone did to help me? What did I do to help someone else? So you can not only leave on like, wow, that was terrible and I feel like shit. You can also be like, but you know what? My friend brought me a Coke when I really needed it, and that was good. So you can find even just the most basic thing. If there's not something that sticks out, generally there's always something that glimmers in our day that keeps us going or keeps us energized or helps us kind of feel safe.
I think it's easier to identify when we were triggered, but not as easy to identify glimmers, because our brains, again, back to the nervous system, they're wired to hold on to negative experiences to protect us. So being intentional about experiencing joy and reliving those moments. But that will take us to the next level, and that will be structural care.
Yeah, so the article goes through all of these, and we just wanted to add structural care in there as we're thinking about the larger systems. And knowing that what you guys are doing is fundamentally trying to overhaul, trying to tear down, trying to rebuild, and that there are also these other, as Vanessa talked about, structural challenges within our society that make it more difficult for us to even be in these spaces. And so recognizing that there's also systems that support community care, support self-care, and those are also things we're fighting for. You might not be fighting for it directly, but other folks, around you in those hallways are also advocating for it. So that
So
is the end of our content. We were going to say the same thing. So any questions or feedback, or I can, if you guys want to see the other resources, we can kind of go through those quickly as well.
Thank you. That was really helpful. I've struggled with a couple of those things. Running my tenants union, it can be emotionally exhausting at times when we're part of a disenfranchised community and trying to organize against people with, political and economic power. So it's hard sometimes to be not discouraged because we don't have the same level of power that the people we organize against do. So that's really helpful. And I'll print out some of those sheets to bring to our meetings, keep people encouraged.
That's awesome. We're glad it could help because you're doing really important work, and that's literally part of community and structural care.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts or anything that resonates or feels true from our presentation?
Oh, I'm unmuted. Cool. And I didn't hear the last thing that you said. Did you say something, Alexis?
Yeah, I was just encouraging more thoughts or connections with what we've shared, or if there's any follow-ups you would like from us. If you think of something afterwards as well, please email us. We're here. So like Megan, when you're talking to your group, if you're like, oh, I have these sheets, how am I going to connect it? Just reach out. We're really, really happy to support.
Or additional resources if there's something specifically your group is dealing with, we could always share what we have too.
Yeah, definitely. The part on boundaries really spoke to me in particular. In the building that I live in, it's primarily elderly folks. So they're at home all day and their time and schedule looks a lot different than mine does. So sometimes because I think they've been out of like either the workforce or the higher education field for a while, they forget that my time isn't or my day doesn't necessarily look the same as theirs. So we've had a couple of talks about boundaries before and when I'm accessible and work and things like that.
That's great.
So should we walk them through a couple of the
Yeah.
additional resources?
Yeah, we have time.
Yeah, we have quite a few, and this presentation will be shared with y'all to have the links to all of these. But we just have a lot of like self-care activities and just tools to practice.
Yeah, so this big list I really like. And we did give you the link to the big list. It's got some that you're like, okay, yeah, that's obvious, but other ones that I think we don't think of as much. Vanessa, can you click the hyperlink just because it's super small?
There we go. Oh, why does
Can you
not?
zoom in? We'll make sure it has the right link.
Oh, is that? There we go.
Okay,
Okay.
cool.
This is
Awesome. Yeah, so I've had folks, clients that I work with before, print this list out and put it up and try to do all of them, or create a little bingo board for themselves. So there's some ways you can use this for you, just if you want to try to practice these or choose a few that you want to try to practice to make it fun. But yeah, simple things like stretching your muscles. Actually organizing a party. One of the folks I work with last week was just experiencing really being re-triggered and having a PTSD episode. And what they did was plan a Super Bowl party. They didn't really care about either of the teams, but they had fun planning the snacks and the food and seeing all their friends together. So that would be an example of that. Giving your pet a bath, going to the movies. So this list is really great. As we were doing some research, we found that other list that we linked on here. So for some of us, we lean towards certain areas of self-care. So this is nice because it breaks up, you know what, I need more spiritual self-care today, or mental or social. So it kind of breaks it up into that as well. The next slides are just talking about self-compassion. So 2 years ago, I did this presentation as well. And we leaned in really hard on self-compassion. So I just wanted to put these things in there to know, for you all to know, there are steps to self-compassion, which also shocked me. Not something I learned growing up or in my 20s. So self-compassion is self-kindness, mindfulness, and common humanity. So self-kindness, treating yourself like you would your best friend. We are very hard on us and our internal voice, but if you can switch that and think, well, what would I tell Vanessa? Would I say, suck it up and do it? Or would I say, that sounds really hard. Maybe you should take a break. The common humanity is recognizing that all humans suffer. So even in that moment of suffering, if you feel alone, there are other people who share that suffering with you. And then mindfulness is just noticing. So how is my nervous system activating right now? Have I eaten? Did I sleep well? Right? So kind of being mindful of what you might need. So the next thing are some affirmations that we love. And so our 10 self-compassion affirmations to think of, to prepare if you know, wow, I'm going to be experiencing a lot of secondary trauma today because all I'm doing is hearing people's stories. You can write down a few of these. Today, I will treat myself with kindness. I am enough. I'm worthy of compassion. So some of these are just really great to think of. I really like that I allow myself to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. I'm a perfectionist. And so if I do something wrong, I will be hard on myself. So that one's been really helpful for me. The next one is just some research about self-compassion. So if you want to read more about that. The last one, the second to last one is 50 ways to take a break. I just love this because you don't have to really read. It's colorful. And it's something I've seen in multiple settings. And then the last one are just some self-compassion exercises. So let's see, I think it's the very last slide. Yeah. So that's a link to the article, but it's just giving yourself a break. You can write yourself a letter. You can use supportive touch. So asking for a hug, a consenting hug or a high five or whatever is going to feel like a supportive touch, and then addressing your inner critic. So you can read that article and learn more about those. And that is all we have for you guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, that was so amazing. Thank you both so much. That was beautifully done. Moving on to our next presentation, we're excited to welcome Sharon McKinney, who's here in the room with us, and Tandy Smith, who's also in the room with us, to discuss advocating behind the scenes and tools of the trade. So a little bit about them. Sharon McKinney is the executive director of the Texas Inmate Families Association, known as TIFA. As a certified mental health peer specialist and reentry peer specialist, she draws from her lived experience to advocate for those impacted by the carceral system. Sharon is a dedicated voice for criminal justice reform and a passionate supporter of incarcerated individuals and their families. And Tangi, I just call you Tangi. Tangi, what do you go by?
Oh, Tangi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell my government name. You don't have to.
Tangi. Yeah.
He goes by Tangi. Tangi is just easier for me. But Unique, beautiful name. Tangi Smith is the founder and executive director of the Texas Federation of the People Foundation, Incorporated. With a background in public policy and grassroots organizing, Tangi champions social equity and empowers marginalized communities. Her leadership ensures that all voices are heard in the decision-making process. So please join us in welcoming Sharon and Tangi.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining in. So becoming a social justice advocate in Texas, a guide for degreed and non-degreed individuals. And this is a pathway to advocacy for all Texans. So our agenda overview. Where's your volume? Okay. So our agenda overview is going to be the introduction, pathway to becoming a social justice advocate, joining a local and national nonprofits, engaging with legislative members in various levels of advocacy. The overview of social justice advocacy is promoting social change. Social justice advocates focus on promoting change that addresses systematic issues affecting marginalized communities. Understanding marginalized issues, advocates work to understand the unique challenges faced by marginalized communities to address their needs effectively. Effective solutions, advocacy involves developing and implementing effective solutions to combat social justice and promote equity. The importance of advocacy in Texas. A diverse population. Texas is the home to a rich tapestry of culture, facing unique social and economic challenges that require advocacy. The need for advocacy. Effective advocacy ensures that voices of all Texans are heard in the policymaking process, promoting inclusive governance. Now that's going to be key to this whole entire project, because we want to make sure that we're advocating for the things that we need here in Texas. And reflecting Texans' need, advocacy plays a critical role or a crucial role in shaping policies that address the social, economic, and political needs of a diverse Texas population. That's going to be another key one. The symbol of governance. The Texas State Capitol represents the governance of the state and the central hub for legislative activities. Even though in all 254 counties, we have representatives, we have state representatives, and we have senators, but they are key to getting the things that we need to make sure that policies are being changed and updated for what it is that we're actually fighting for. Democrat, Republican, Independent, it don't matter. We need to go and talk to these people. These people sit on committees, these people sit on chairs, these people are in a place where they need to be at, and they are at our disposal. We just have to know how to go in and use that. So Legislative Action Center, serving as the center for legislative action, and the Capitol is pivotal in shaping state laws and policies. So this is where it all happens, right here in the Capitol, right here in the city of Austin. Social justice advocacy. Engaging with Texas Capitol can strengthen the efforts of social justice advocates and community organizers. So these two go hand in hand. This is a pivotal role. If in fact we're being advocates and we're talking and we want to get our bills passed, we have to meet the people where they are. Whether we going into where they at, we sending emails, we sending postcards, we sending whatever, we making communication with staffers, we have to do that. We have to do that. The path to becoming a social justice advocate. For degree individuals, leveraging academic backgrounds, individuals with degrees can utilize their academic skills to better understand and analyze complex social issues. Conducting research with a solid education foundation, they can effectively conduct research that informs social initiatives and policy changes. Leading initiatives. Their socialized knowledge empowers them to lead initiatives that address critical social challenges and advocate for change. For non-degree individuals, impactful advocacy, this is where it's all at. Impactful advocacy. Non-degree individuals can specifically influence social justice movements through their unique perspective and experience. And each and every one of us have our own individual experiences when it comes to advocacy and policy changes. Life experience matters. Personal experiences can serve as a powerful motivator, driving non-degree individuals to advocate for change or to advocate for change. Community involvement, engagement in local communities, foster connections, and empowers non-degree individuals to advocate effectively, meaning that she has a law degree or he has a degree, she has a degree, worlds are totally different. they don't have the same aspect as an individual with a non-degree because they're not on the same level, or they're not sitting in the same communities, or they're not addressing the same needs. So an individual that comes from a silver spoon background wouldn't know what it feels like to go hungry and not have lights. So a person with a non-degree can bring that to their legislative body and say, hey, I need you to upgrade these laws. I need you to change these laws, and I need you to write a policy and a bill that's gonna reflect why it's imperative to have caps on light bills, on light companies, because guess what? This group of people is marginalized and they cannot afford electricity. So that's why it's imperative for individuals to have that experience so they'll know how to talk about it. And guess what? Nobody's story is greater than a person that's already accepted and received what it is that they have happened to them. So that's how that works. Skills and qualities of an effective advocate. Strong communication skills. Effective advocates need communication. They need to communicate clearly and persuasively to convey their message and influence others. Communication is the key. Regardless of how it comes out, it's coming from the heart. And if you can tell somebody and share your story with your legislator or with a what do they call a staffer, you can pretty much get your idea and your point across on how it is, what they've done or what they said has affected you in the community that you're coming from. Empathy and understanding. Empathy allows advocates to connect with individuals and communities, fostering deeper understanding of social issues. Everybody don't understand what social issues really are. They just think it's just a thing. You know, it's not a thing, because social issues are different depending on where you live or where you come from. Everybody don't have the same social issues. Adaptability and resilience. Navigating the advocacy landscape requires adaptability and resilience in the face of challenges and changing circumstances. We're going through circumstances right now. Joining local and national nonprofits. This part is pivotal because we can have local nonprofits right here that's fighting for the same things that people across the United States are fighting for. So I believe that it would be advantageous for you to join a national nonprofit that's fighting for you on a federal level that can help you push laws that you want to push in your state, that they can push at the federal level so that it can be an all-in-one effort. So therefore, when other states have passed laws, we can use that as ammunition to say, hey, Texas, this is what this, and this state has done. So we need you to adopt these same policies so that we can have relief just like the other states, and we can live the life that we choose to live, or we can chase the pursuit of happiness, or we can live liberty the way that we want to live it. So I think that it's very imperative that we all understand the difference between a local nonprofit and a national nonprofit. They both work hand in hand. You just have to do your homework to figure out which nonprofit is going to be beneficial for you and which one is not, and which one has the actual policies that you want to see come forward and which nonprofit doesn't. The processes of joining a nonprofit. You have the application process. Joining a local nonprofit often starts with filling out an application to express your interest and your background. The orientation events. Attending orientation events is a common step for new members to learn about the organization and its mission. In the community engagement, engaging with community members during events and deepening your understanding of local issues and the nonprofit's impact. That's another imperative one. The process of joining a national nonprofit. Structured application process. National nonprofit typically have clear and structured application process that potential members must follow in order to join. Networking opportunities are key. Attending network events provide valuable opportunities to connect with organizations and learn about their missions and their campaigns. Learn about campaigns or learning campaigns. Networking also allows individuals to gain insight into the national campaign of the various nonprofits and how to get involved. Anybody have any questions? Engaging with legislative members, and I think that's gonna be for you.
Brianna?
No. Okay,
I'm your assistant.
testifying before a house, that was you, right?
Yeah, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. No, but we don't want to be redundant.
Yeah, we don't want, because I just wanted to say it for her. Okay. Okay.
She has her own pieces uncovered.
Oh, okay. Okay. So testifying before the House members, direct advocacy is testifier provides advocacy with a platform to present their concerns and their recommendations directly to lawmakers. When I said a couple of slides ago, it's imperative that you speak with staffers, or it's imperative that you meet with the actual lawmaker itself. This is the opportunity for you to go ahead and get your points across on how it is and what it is, what policies you want to change, or what bills you would like to see to be signed into law, or what bills that you want to actually advocate for. And the importance of preparation is preparing a clear and concise statement that's essential for effectively communicating social justice issues to a lawmaker. Influencing policymakers, and this is where we all come in, testifying can influence lawmakers' perspective and contribute to policy changes that address social justice issues. Communicating with House members. Importance of communication is maintaining regular communication with House members as crucial for keeping social justice issues prioritized. Effective communication methods using emails, phone calls, and in-person meetings are effective methods to share your perspectives with lawmakers. In sharing your perspectives, sharing personal stories and perspectives can help lawmakers understand the importance of social justice issues. Communicating with Senate members. Importance of engagement. Engaging with Senate members is essential for advocating for effectively conveying their messages and influencing decision makings. Research appropriate channels. Advocates should identify and utilize the right communication channels to ensure their message resonate with the senators. Various levels of advocacy. You have the grassroots advocacy, community mobilization. Grassroots advocacy thrives on mobilizing community members to take action on local issues that matter to them. Coalition building. Building coalitions with various community groups enhances the effectiveness and the reach of advocacy efforts. Organizing events. Organized events such as rallies and workshops can raise awareness and foster community engagement on the local issues. Community organizations. Rallying individuals. Community organizations focus on bringing people together to support specific causes and initiatives that matters to them. Collaborative and shared goals. Effective community organizing relies on collaboration among members, establishing shared goals to foster the sense of unity and empowerment of community members. Empowering community members is crucial, allowing them to take initiatives and participate actively in their community. Policy advocates. Influencing legislation, and that's what we all would want to do, to influence legislation for what it is that we're looking for. Policy advocates focus on influencing legislation to shaping public policies to meet community needs and interests. Lobbying efforts. Lobbying efforts are a key component to policy advocacy involving direct interactions with lawmakers and government officials. Drafting proposals. Drafting policy proposals is essential for outlining specific changes and solutions to be presented to lawmakers and stakeholders. Anybody have any questions?
What are some methods, like, as far as like what we can do, when we're organizing to, not necessarily influence our constituents, but, empower them? Like, I noticed, like, when I was out doing like work and community, like trying to get people to vote, get students to vote, especially like youth or just, different age groups, I ran into a lot of issues where it seems like we're like, not necessarily like forcing them to vote, but it just came off more where like, it's not very empowering. Like, how can we, like, in what ways can I use to like empower constituents to like get more active and like advocacy?
Give them the opportunity to share their story, because nobody can duplicate or replicate their story better than the person that it was affected. Or if the person that has experienced that issue. When you allow a person to have a platform to speak, it's gonna flow from the heart. It's not gonna be scripted. And that's the most powerful and the most impactful way to create social change, is when you allow a person to have the mic so they can invoke their emotions and their feelings on how they actually felt or how they feeling at that particular time when they're talking to lawmakers. I can't tell their story greater than they can. When you do that, you open up the door and you give them a sense of power, because at that particular moment, those short 2 minutes that they have is gonna open up the door for everybody in the room to hear what it is they have to say and understand how that particular issue that they're fighting for has impacted their lives. So to answer your question, allowing a person the opportunity to share their own story is the greatest way to move the needle forward in the direction that you want it to go in.
Can I add to that a little bit too? Because I hear what you're saying, right? I too am out in these streets trying to encourage our people especially to become involved in this movement that we're having, right? And it's hard. So I think that one of the ways that we empower people is by educating people, right? So share with them why it's important. Share with them the conversations that are already being had around those things that they call important to them. And then you can open up the space where they can add to the narrative with their own lived experience, right? Did that help a little bit?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome.
Thank you.
In conclusion, the role of advocacy, social justice advocacy is crucial for creating fair and equitable society. Everyone has the power to contribute to this cause. Engagement with communities. Engaging with diverse communities foster inclusive and understanding, which are vital for effective advocacy and making a difference. Taking action and volunteering are essential steps in making a positive impact on society.
We are all like pushing bills that are very hard to educate people on. And just thinking back to the last legislative session when we had a hearing in the House on the earned time credit bill, it was the very last one on the agenda. And when we finally got to testify, there was really nobody up there on the podium. So it's like we knew that the committee didn't really want to hear what we had to say, but what we have to say is important. So how can we do better at that? How can we do better at educating when they really don't care about that?
I think also too, because I think that's something we've all been kind of like pondering and thinking about. And I think like it's important that I think the focus is always on empowering our folks. and using that as just one space to do that in. And I think particularly thinking back on the conversation around community care and self-care and all that, I think that's where that becomes important, where whatever it is that we're doing, right, particularly like such a big bill like that one, the one you mentioned. I mean, obviously, we need folks at the legislature to pass that. And I think to some extent that comes down to like doing a lot of work around who are the people who support it, who are your persuadables, and who are your staunch opponents. And going through that, realizing you don't need everyone. You don't need everyone. And so I think part of the strategy is focusing on those persuadables on that. And if you know someone that's not going to support it at all, you need 76 votes or whatever I think it passed, right? But I think it's also like, how do we build a movement that's much larger than the legislature?
Power mapping.
Yeah.
Right?
Like on that bill, it's every 2 years, it's going to be the cycle, right? And we know that that's a tough bill. And so if the legislative piece of it is the only thing we have going, then that can be a very disempowering experience. But if we find ways to organize and advocate outside of that, doing things in between session, doing more, and I'm talking about like events outside, all across the state to organize community members, because when their district starts calling, that's when they answer. But then it also opens you up to figure out how to get people involved in things that they don't need someone empowering to them, having community conversations with maybe their neighbors or their friends. So that way it's not just focused on the ledge, but that's a piece of it, yes, but that's not the whole pie of things. And so there's all these other things that we kind of go in and get sort of creative with, or get really bigger with. Because I think, and that's part of advocating too, is that if we always just focus just in on the legislative session, then I think it becomes very disempowering. So finding out what are those strategies of advocacy engagement we can do that's outside of it, as well. I think that's important.
And Sharon, that's why I believe that community engagement is key, because that's where you offer the education. That's where you actually tell people this, and this. And if we do this, and this, we have a stronger chance showing up in unity, and we, can get the ear of the person that we're trying to get the ear of so that we can move forward.
We are at our last presentation for the day. That's not where the intro is. Hold on, guys. Okay. So our last presentation is going to be on advocating in committee and on the floor. And our presenter is Margarita Luna. Maggie Luna is a Texas-based advocate with expertise in policy, decarceration, and harm reduction. With over 7 years of experience, she works to reduce incarceration, combat harsh sentencing and racial inequities, and promote community-centered justice. As executive director of the Texas Harm Reduction Alliance and former lead organizer of the statewide leadership council, she empowers leaders and amplifies marginalized voices. Her 20-year journey through opioid addiction, incarceration, and homelessness drives her commitment to fostering compassion, healing, and accountability while building systems that prioritize safety and well-being outside of incarceration. And, fun fact, we were incarcerated together and in treatment together.
No.
And now we fight this fight together.
So beautiful.
So she's also my soulmate. So, and my spirit animal.
Okay, so my name is Maggie Luna, and I'm the executive director of Texas Harm Reduction Alliance. I've also done some work at the Texas State Legislature. I was working with Texas Center for Justice and Equity for the past 2 sessions and did a little bit of work passing a few bills. And so this matters to me because it works. My son is home now because of advocacy that was done in the state legislature. And so this is super important, and I'm really glad that everybody is here So, the purpose of today is just to understand the legislative process. Understand and learn how to advocate in the subcommittees and how to share your story effectively. Very quickly, how does a bill become a law in Texas? So I wanted to just, for anybody who doesn't understand, don't freak out, because it is not something that is natural. And especially if you've been incarcerated before, or if you live the streets like I did, this is not something that I paid attention to out there. And so, just very quickly, you know, the bill filing opens before session before session begins. Usually the deadline to file a bill is in March. Once the bill is filed, it will get referred to a committee. The committee chair decides to hold whether a hearing will be held or not. And then that's where they'll hear testimony. And then the committee will either vote it out or let it die right there. If they vote it out, it goes to the full House or Senate floor to be reviewed by the full committee. And if it's voted out of there, it will pass out to the other chamber of the House or the Senate, whichever one, or it dies there. We had a bill die on the House floor last session because we refused to make the concessions that they asked for. And so, and then just will repeat the process for whatever chamber it goes over to. Then it goes over to our amazing Governor Abbott, who is just such a advocate for humanity and just kidding. So you can either veto it or sign it, but yeah, he's an amazing person.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Can you explain what happens when the bill goes to calendar?
When it goes to calendar, I don't know, it just goes straight to the floor. I mean, straight to the House floor.
Yeah, so the Texas House is the only one that has a calendars committee, because in the Senate, the Senate governor is that. But so if it gets voted out of committee, they'll go to calendars. And then that committee will decide essentially when it gets to the House floor for a vote. So your bill could die in committee, or it could also die in calendar.
Okay, so what is a subcommittee? Subcommittee is the smaller committees. There's like criminal jurisprudence, criminal justice, children's, I can't remember all of them because guess what? I don't do that anymore. But so the subcommittee reviews the bill more in depth. Then they can amend the bill, kill the bill, or pass the bill. And it's just a smaller group of lawmakers. And here is where your testimony makes a greater impact because it is a smaller group. Bless you.
That was it, I promise.
And yeah, they can ask you questions and follow up with you. There's a little picture of me testifying at the Committee on Appropriations. Oh, I don't even know. But yeah, so how do you identify the right subcommittee? I think y'all did navigating TLO this morning.
Yeah.
And so you would go into the Texas Legislature online. And that's where you can find your committee assignments. Ones that are usually relevant to us is health corrections, criminal jurisprudence, Senate criminal justice, or House correction. Oh wait, I already said House correction. And so these are the ones that I usually focused on. And so whenever you're following a bill, you find what subcommittee it goes to. And it will be underneath the committee referral and TLO. So you go to the committee's webpage, committee's website on TLO. And so that's where you'll look up these committee members. The House Corrections has a certain amount of members. These are the people who will vote on the bill first. So these are the people that you need to know. a good rule of thumb is to research what they voted on in the past. Follow their Twitter, look up their social media and see what kind of stances they have taken in the past. And that'll give you the kind of a sense on how to approach these people. Texas is tough on crime, and last session, our health corrections chair was Representative Murr, and he had handlebar mustache and cowboy boots, and I'm a little 4'11" Mexican felon with tattoos. And so I had to adjust this whole staff because they're all from the same space. And I knew that they were tough on crime, so I had to relate to the committee member and to the House representative and to the staffer in like a human way. And so I followed Grayson's Twitter. I saw where Grayson was going. Grayson was one of the staffers. And so anyway, that's a way to get in. Talk to the staffers. Go have a drink with them. I don't drink, but I talked to people who did drink with him. And I got all of the cheese made. And so it was a good connection, you know? And then later on during the session, House Representative Murr called us for advice on bills and things that were happening inside of TDC that he didn't understand. So prepare to testify. First of all, you must know the bill. Reading a bill is extremely overwhelming, or it can be. And so when you read it for the first time, it's like, for me, it was like another language. It does become easier, but you have to like read the caption, read the analysis, there's legal text, and always, if you're confused, ask somebody. Do not go in to testify thinking that you know a bill and end up testifying for something that is extremely bad. Yeah.
Use ChatGPT.
So they didn't have ChatGPT, not back in my day. But
I mean, you can now.
Yeah, you can now. But
and say decipher this.
it's a little long way. Yeah, the Good Samaritan bill, which was a crap bill for harm reduction, it did not go far enough, and I didn't understand the bill, and I was told go testify on this bill, and it did not look good because it was not a good bill, and I did not read it. So don't do that. Don't do that. Make sure that you know the bill. And that you are not supporting something that is not good for the community that you're serving.
Is this a little snapshot of you?
Yeah, this is tiny thing. Okay. It's
That's Jen. Oh, that's Jennifer. Okay, and little Maggie.
Yeah,
little Maggie.
Whose head can just go over the podium. Yeah. So preparing the story. This was me and testifying in front of the Senate for House Bill 29 or Senate Bill whatever turned into. So it's House Bill 2926, and I was testifying my story about family reunification and separation of my children when I was in prison and in my addiction. So the point is, make it short and sweet, but make it impactful. So your intro needs to be like, hi, my name is Maggie. I'm in support for House Bill 2926. This affects me because, and I talked about, you know, I'm somebody who used drugs for a very long time, and then I am now doing this work, and I still haven't been able to have any contact with my son. So if this bill were to be passed, it would change my life and my child's life. So you talk about like the emotional hook, you focus on humanistic personal impact. And personal stories are really effective at the Senate and the House. And especially if you talk about like who this will impact, if there's a child involved, it usually gets some more attention. And then always have a call to action, like please vote yes on this bill. It would, be amazing. And offer follow-up, like, and I'm available for questions or whatever. And so if they start asking you questions that you have no idea, you can always say, I'm not sure, but I will get back to you on that. Or I can follow up with your office. Yeah, do not try to answer something and just, it's okay to say, I'm not sure. I will follow up. After this hearing, one of the, Senator Hinojosa followed me out of the Senate floor and was like, thank you so much for sharing your story. I didn't know stuff like this was happening, so it's really important that you share, because these people do not know anything. They don't know what's going on inside of TDCJ. They don't know what's going on inside of the jails. They don't know what's going on the streets. All they know is what the lobbyists are telling them. And the lobbyists have money and the lobbyists don't care about us. And so it is very important to organize people who have real stories and bring them to tell those stories. Make sure you keep it concise and let them ask you more questions or follow up with the office. If you follow up with the office, that you have more time to go talk to them and tell them the full story. But always connect it to the policy. Such as this bill will reduce recidivism because blah, blah, blah. But yes, always answer the most impactful testimony I've ever seen is honest. Do not go in there being fake, fraud, whatever, like just tell your story. Just, and if you don't know, I don't know. And these people who are sitting on the dais are all people. And remember that. Remember these people are people and we pay their bills. I mean, yeah, we pay for the Texas State Capitol. We employ these people. So it's important to learn who the members are, who these people are, and the committees that you're testifying in front of. Learn who they are, speak to their values, and go into those offices and make your face known, whether they like it or not. I've kicked in a lot of doors and probably was really annoying at first, but they ended up having to say, well, uh-oh, she knows something that I don't know. And so, just go, just do it. I'm going to share my testimony.
I am in support of 2793, and happy birthday, Dr. Allen.
Thank you.
And thank you, Representative Johnson. First of all, like I would like to just kind of these practices that we are asking because of COVID, and they are, very, it seems to be like we're on the same page, So it would just be a process that it would move us closer to a more common sense parole process. So from my experience, the beginning of my sentence was when I wanted help. So anything would have helped me. After being in there for so long, I was in a survival mode. So I was living just to live to the next day. I didn't know if I was going to die in the heat. I didn't know if somebody was going to cut me in the middle of the night. I didn't know they were going to steal my zuzus and wham-whams. So I wasn't thinking about rehabilitation by the time I was ready to go home. So I was going to be released into my old environment with that mindset of survival. Now, I got out and found a program in the free world, and that's a whole different story. But if I would have been offered services in the beginning, maybe my process would have been different. And I wouldn't have just been sitting there waiting for someone to throw a dart and say, yes, it's your turn to go. So unfortunately, I believe that nothing happens uniformly across TDCJ. What's going on the ground is not portrayed up top. Y'all may hear one story, but when you walk in those doors and they lock it and y'all go home at night, that is not what's happening in there. So our ask is that this is just a uniform process, that if it's happening at one unit, it's happening at another unit. There are not, I mean, and my heart goes out to this woman, not everybody is sitting in there with a life sentence. We are gonna come home. 40 years, 20 years, 90 years, we are coming home. Do you want us to come home living in survival for so long? Or do you want us to come home having had these options, being able to have these cognitive classes and think differently, maybe anger management? The environment of TDCJ would be so much different if we had these classes upon arrival. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that was really embarrassing. But that was one of the first, I don't remember what happened there, but Andy Kahn was there. And Andy Kahn is a Crime Stoppers. Yeah. And he really hates us. And so like right before I testified, a lady was up there saying that we shouldn't do any parole reform because her baby was murdered. And so I was really nervous because I was like, you know, I mean, yeah. So, but it was, I like that because I want people to understand that it can be nerve-wracking, it can be stressful. Just remember those people are just people. And so what happens next? The subcommittee will vote on the bill. And if it passes, it'll go to the opposite floor, either the House or the Senate. Then it'll go to the full chamber for a vote. If it doesn't pass, just keep pushing. Okay. Other ways that you can advocate. Meeting one-on-one with lawmakers or their staff. That is a really good way to advocate. Get to know these people, have them pushing for your bill. Doug Smith is my mentor. And one of the things that he told me was, you may not get the bill passed, but if you have people at the Capitol speaking about a bill the way you speak, that's a win. And so we were pushing a bill for, it's called Rulings. It was to allow people with felony convictions to petition the court after a certain amount of years to have that record sealed. It wasn't mandatory, you know, sealing my record after this amount of time. It just gives me the opportunity to ask a judge to look at me and see if you can hide this from stopping me from getting a job or getting housing. And so when people first read the bill, they were like, oh no, you know, we need to know what's going on, you know. But the more that I was in there talking to lawmakers, then I had other lawmakers going up there and saying, this isn't like you're clean as soon as this is, you know, we still have the option and the discretion to not give this person a sealed record. So when I started hearing like Jeff Leach say the same thing that I had been saying, it was really like a big win because now he's advocating in spaces that I'm not in about things that he didn't know about before. And so these things are really important, is to humanize this stuff to these people and have them talking about your priorities when you're not around. And so this is so important. Letters and emails and phone calls are important. I think phone calls, I wish I could organize a group of people to call their lawmakers 16 times a day because they're so impactful. But I have not done it yet. But if I could, that's important. Mobilizing a network, even if I always tell people, do whatever you can with what you have from where you are. You don't have to be at the Capitol all the time. That is, I have PTSD from that. And so you do not have to do that. But it is important, and I really highly respect the people who are doing it right now. Because it is important, it is highly needed. But if you can't do that, letters, emails, and phone calls are important. Also, getting your community to write letters, send emails, and phone calls. So not only meeting with lawmakers and their staff, but also having your neighbors and community, which are constituents of whatever your lawmaker is. If they're calling their lawmaker, then they're hearing it from other places too, and so it becomes more important to them. And so after you testify, you always follow up and stay engaged. I used to follow up with the offices that authored our bills, and I'd be like, hey, where is it at now? Hey, what have you heard? Because if it's already gone to the House floor, the lawmakers are out on the floor trying to get the votes. And so you need to have those lawmakers know what they're saying to get these votes. And so when it's on a full House floor and you see them all walking around, they're like, they have these little code cards that we would create for them, which was like a little card that they would keep in their coat pocket, that they could have a couple of bullet points on why this bill is important. So whenever they're trying to whip votes, they know what to say. And so it's important that the lawmaker that has filed the bill understands how to convey that message to get the votes. So always stay engaged, follow up with the staffer, make sure the staffer understands. A really important way to advocate is mobilizing your network. Well, I just said that. I mean, that's just like so important. When we show up at the Capitol with a group of people and we're all saying the same message and we're all telling real stories and they're all different, I mean, it's impactful, totally. And meeting with the ledge staffers is sometimes more important because they really know more than the lawmakers. I mean, these people that sit on the dais, I swear, do not know anything. They hear it from their staffers. And so they have to be educated before they go out on the floor. And so if you make sure those staffers are educated, they will make sure the lawmaker is educated. Make sure it's easy for them to understand because if they don't understand it, then they're not going to even try to engage with the lawmaker. And so if you can't show up for testimony, you can always do written testimony online, or you can go up and drop a card. That's where you, let's say I was in one hearing and I wanted to support another bill. I would go in there, go to the little kiosk, and I can't remember this, like, go to the kiosk and I would register either in support or oppose that bill, and that would be like dropping a card. So sometimes we would have people go up there and just drop cards on it for us as an organization, and so that's really impactful too. So a few takeaways is your lived experience is freaking powerful. I'm gonna say the F word. But our stories move these lawmakers. They may act like they don't care or whatever, but once they start seeing stuff that we go through, And it now, and I'm always telling them, like, I'm sitting in front of you now, there's a million people just like me waiting to come home, and they can be sitting in front of you too. And so just humanizing the issue is really important. And understand that real change takes time. It may not happen and it will be overwhelming, but stay persistent because our voices matter. Your voice matters, your story matters. Any questions?
I have a question. Is one way better than the other? Calling, in-person visits, email, do you see one of those ways more effective than the other?
I think they are all equally important. Emails, when a lawmaker is seeing it from every corner, then they're gonna be like, what the hell is this?
What is this?
You know? And so when you have a phone call, an email, and then somebody in your office, that's when they're like, okay, I need to pay attention. This is something people care about. Any other questions?
The phone calls are logged, right?
Yes.
So they know how many have called in on that.
Yes, the staffer has to log that and convey that information to the lawmaker. And it's really important if you are one of their constituents. So like if I'm going into the house, the Capitol, I would go see my lawmaker first because that's going to be the most impactful place for me to use my voice because I am her constituent. I say her because Senator Eckhart's my senator. But always make sure that like if you have somebody in your group who is in a different district, go see that rep with that person.